What's up, everyone? It's the interview queen Alicia Toot here, and be sure to watch True Heel Heat.
Rob Van Dam, listening to True Heel Heat. Pow.
Hello everyone, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley wishing a nice day to everyone there, right there at True Heel Heat. Yeah!
Yo, what up? You know what it is. It's your boy AJ Francis reporting to you live from New York City, the birthplace of hip-hop. And I'm telling you that I'm only tuned in with True Heel Heat Wrestling. Holla at me.
What's going on, everybody? This is your former AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Once a champion, always a champion. Swerve Strickland. Whose house? Swerve's house. You're watching True Heel Heat podcast.
Hello, hello, hello. It is me, your True Heel Phenom SP3. We are live on the True Heel Heat YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for our TNA Bound For Glory 2024 review. Breaking down last night's show from Detroit, Michigan, TNA's biggest show of the year, and oh boy, there's a lot to discuss. I am joined here today by my esteemed colleague, my good brother over on the True Heel Heat flagship podcast, as well as your good brother of the drawing, the True Draw himself. Josh, how are you doing?
Doing good. Haven't talked TNA in a while, so let's get to it.
Indeed. We got a lot to discuss from their biggest show of the year, TNA Bound For Glory. Last night, Detroit, Michigan, a sold-out crowd in Detroit, the highest grossing Bound For Glory event since 2013. So we got a lot to unwrap from last night's show. We appreciate y'all. If you are joining us live, appreciate y'all. If you're watching us on demand, remember to show your appreciation back. The simplest way possible is by dropping the thumbs up on this video. You can also share this video with all your wrestling fans, friends, and family on all your favorite social media platforms. If you are new to the True Heel Heat YouTube channels, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to stay notified for all the great content here. And of course, if you're watching us on Facebook, you could drop a thumbs up, a heart emoji, an angry emoji, a laughing emoji. However, TNA Bound For Glory made you feel. Let us know with those emotes. If you're watching us on Twitter, you can drop a heart, retweet the video, help out the algorithm over there. But most of all, if you're watching on any of those platforms, you can sound off in the live chat. We love to interact with all of you guys. If you're with us live, we love to interact if you're watching us on demand. So let us know in the comments down below what you thought about TNA Bound For Glory. But if you're with us live, we'll try to highlight as many of your comments as possible. But of course, if you're feeling generous, you want to give back to what we do here and make sure your comment is highlighted on screen, become a part of the conversation about TNA Bound For Glory, you can send a super chat donation. Any dollar amount matters. It goes back to contributors that you see on screen with us here. And we always appreciate that kind of support. We got one of our members of the channel. You can become a member by hitting the join button and become a member of the True Hill Heat YouTube channel, like Call Me Mr. Banda, who says, I'll just go right ahead and take my victory lap and say Joe Hendry is a bum. Damn, we're starting off with the spicy takes. Spicy take out here. I mean, that was probably my down point of the show, where I was just like, what? What? Not now. When are they gonna do it? Are they ever gonna do it? I want to be. I like the show overall, but that one point, I was just like, this honey dicking with Joe Hendry has to stop. Like, you guys are not WWE. I saw people being like, oh, Cody, it took him over a year to finish his story. It took him 2 years to finish his story. I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you know a news flash, TNA fans. TNA is not WWE when it's the hottest it's been since Attitude Era. TNA is the hottest it's been since the 2000s, but you guys are not WWE. So stop that. Stop that nonsense. That's nonsense to compare y'all. What was your reaction to seeing Joe Hendry come up short in the TNA World Championship matchup?
I mean, the way I feel about it, honestly, it's just I don't know. I thought yesterday that they'll pull the trigger, and apparently they didn't. It's like, okay, when is it gonna happen? And I get it. They're trying to do like some kind of adversity kind of like story with him, but at the same time, it's like how many hoops you got to throw at this guy for him to like finally win it. It's one of those things where it's like you strike while the iron is hot, and at this point, it just feels like it's slipping. So it kind of feels like the moment that it happens. Like, is it gonna mean a lot? Like how it probably would have meant yesterday, and that's why it's always one of those crazy things where, sometimes you wait too long, it could hurt the person. Sometimes you do it too quick, it could hurt the person. I thought yesterday would have probably been the right time, even though maybe it could have been done sooner. But now at this point, you're just prolonging it. But then also the Cody comparison, you know what it is? I think sometimes with wrestling fans, I think that sometimes they get a little too comfortable with certain things. So they expect everything to be the same. So because we had like this whole Cody Rhodes thing going on of like, oh, like, look what he had to deal with. He lost last year WrestleMania, and then a year later he won. He finally won it. But I'm just like, not every story has to be that. Yeah. And then also,
and Cody was a special case where you had a guy who held the title that was about to hit 1,000 days. So he had to hold on to the title to get to the 1,000 days and have this historic run. And he is the champion that is really kind of the cornerstone of the turnaround period of the company. But the turnaround period for TNA came prior to Nic Nemeth being champion. So that's already disqualifies the comparison. This felt more like, and you might appreciate this. I don't know if you were watching at the time, but for older Ring of Honor fans, this is more reminiscent of Tyler Black's chase for the ROH World Championship, where they kept honey-dicking that. And then when he wins the title, it did not feel as important as it would have been if he won at Final Battle 2009. And then when he wins the title in 2010, just a few months later, he signs with WWE. That's what this is more comparison of. That you are waiting way too long to crown someone who might just turn around after a few months of holding your top title and say, I'm going to WWE.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, that's how I'm sorry to feel with Joe Hendry. But then also, it's not the same when it comes to like, even like with Cody, just because like when Cody had his title match, it was just like it kind of felt like a one-off. He had his title match and he lost, and he didn't get a rematch. He got the rematch because he earned it, winning the Rumble again the same way, and then that's how he got his rematch at WrestleMania. Joe Henry, how many times has this been already? His second try at the
Yeah,
championship, I believe.
that's another big difference is that they did not give Cody a shot at like SummerSlam, then give him a shot at WrestleMania 39, and he fails there, and then wait a year to the biggest show of the year to have him finally win it. And if you try to wait till the biggest show of the year, Bound for Glory 2025, his deal is apparently supposed to run out at the end of the year. So that's waiting way too long. Where like, and he might win it. Us seeing this and being upset with last night, it could like turn around and it could be the best thing for TNA. We're not experts at this. We don't own our own company. We don't book our own wrestling company. But the feeling that I got last night is like, why? And then why in this way? Like, I understand having him come up short. I understand having him screwed over, but he was screwed over by John Bradshaw Layfield in the year of our Lord 2024. That's outrageous.
You remember what I said yesterday? I said, when in 2004 is this? Like, why is this happening? Like, why is this a thing right now? Like, what they like? Why? You know, no disrespect to JBL. You know, I think, you know, with JBL, I think he's an acquiring taste. I think there's people who love what he did. There's some people who just simply don't get it. They're like, what makes him so special? You know, maybe I'm in that spectrum of things, but I do respect of what he's done. I do think he's put in the work. I do think he's put in the time. But it's just, do I want to see 2024 JBL? No. Like, do I want to see a match with JBL at 2024? No. If they do it, they do it. I'm not going to complain about it. But it's like, is this something I really need to see or want to see? No. So it's like, what's this about? And where's this going? I was confused. And I really thought the part when he kicked out, like, I really thought that would be like a big win, like, change, like, oh, all right, he's actually gonna win it, and we were still wrong about that. So I don't know what's going on.
I love the fact that they had him kick out of the clothesline from hell and the danger zone, only to have him still lose after he couldn't hit his finisher. I was like, that was a TNA
And
finish.
you know,
they got our hopes up one last time. Got the big pop.
Yeah, but you know what also is like, and that's another thing too, where it's like, it's kind of weird because like, even in the, what was it, the match where Alexander turned heel, like, he took out the champion, right? Joe Hendry took out the champion, so you would think that was some kind of like momentum, like, oh my god, he's actually gonna finally win it, and then he still lost. And then last night, like you just said, 2 finishers done on him, and he still lost. So I don't know.
It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. We'll talk more about that when we get to that, and we'll see a couple of your comments in the chat. A bunch of people talking about various things throughout the night. We got I Make Beats. He says, yo, Mike Bailey does it again. We also got Ace in the chat who says, what's up, SP3, Josh in chat. We got Eric Isaacs in the chat who says, hello, THH fam. Bailey versus Vikingo was a classic. JBL saves Nemeth again. Masha conquers the Juggernaut, and all hail the Hardys, champions again. And that was the other thing, where as soon as Joe Hendry versus Nic Nemeth was not the main event, I knew what was going to happen. I knew. It's like I had a feeling when they were going over the rundown on the pre-show, and they were talking about, oh, it's a triple main event. You're going to see Jordynne Grace versus Masha Slamovich. You're going to see Nic Nemeth versus Joe Hendry. And you're going to see the Hardys versus ABC versus the System. And I always go, it's really AEW that has taught me this, where the order that they say the matches is usually the order in which those matches are going to take place on the show. So the fact that they said the Hardys ladder match last, I was like, wait, are they gonna close the show, be the real main event? Because then I know for sure Joe Hendry's not winning this world title. And then when it was like, yep, up next is Nemeth versus Joe Hendry after Masha and Jordynne, I was like, oh my god, they're doing it again. They're honey dicking us again.
Yeah, and I think even like honestly, like last night, it was a tough spot too, because I'm like, even if Joe Hendry won, the fact that that wasn't the main event, I think also would have taken away from it too. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe it was a good thing he didn't win, but at the same time, it's like, again, it's all about the time frame. It's like, I think that's where more I'm at, where it's like, I think you guys are taking a little too long at this point, because when Joe Hendry was at his hottest, I'm not saying that he's not hot now, but it definitely wasn't what it was a couple of months ago.
I think he's as hot as he was a couple of months ago, considering the reaction he got in Detroit.
Yeah,
that's why it felt like last night was a great time to do it, to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I don't think, like, more so mainstream. Like, we haven't seen him as much because he's been more focused with TNA stuff. Because like, of course, like, all the NXT stuff, obviously that's a bigger audience, so there was more of a microscope because of that, right? But then once you took him off, it was kind of like, oh, what's Joe Hendry up to? Obviously people who are watching the product, they're watching like TNA, they understand like, oh, he has another title match. Maybe they're gonna focus on that. He'll win it, and then maybe they'll bring him back to use him more on NXT. But then, this happens, so it's kind of like, all right, so what's next from here? Like, what else they're gonna keep building on? That, all right, you need to prove that he's the next guy. I already thought he was already the next guy. I was like, I'm just trying to understand like where they're going with it. Like, what's the hold up? Maybe there's something that we don't know off screen. Like, maybe there's something we don't know that maybe that's why they're waiting. I don't know. I just thought, like you said, I thought yesterday was the right time, but even the placement on the card, I was like, yeah, that's not a good sign. Because I think there was a lot of people, I think I saw like Jeremy's tweet about it. He said the same thing, and it ended up happening, so he ended up being right.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, I don't think that's a good sign. He was like, I don't think it's a good sign.
It was not. I literally messaged y'all. As soon as they said it was up next, I was like, fuck, Henry's not winning this thing again. I was in disbelief, but I was just like, I had basically accepted. I was preemptively terrified at what they were about to do, and it came true. It came a self-fulfilling prophecy, pretty much. But so we'll talk more about the TNA World Title matchup when we get to it. But as we always do with our pay-per-view reviews, Josh, give us your one word, your overall thoughts on TNA Bound for Glory last night.
One word, maybe like one phrase. Not bad. I thought the overall show wasn't bad. Maybe there was like certain things that maybe could have been a little bit better, but overall, I enjoyed the show. Like, I thought it was actually a really good show. Me personally, kind of really didn't feel like it was Bound for Glory, as maybe weird as that sounds. But overall, I liked the show. I also liked the venue too. The venue was like pretty unique. I thought that stuck out to me as well, because it kind of reminded me of like those big independent shows. It kind of reminded me of like Northeast Wrestling, like the venue they used. It kind of reminded me of that, and I thought that was like a nice feel to it. Like, you have like not only the seats, but then you have like a big standing section in the back, and then you have like some of the facades in the back of it. You had like the view on the outside. I thought it was I thought it was like a good venue to do it at. And then it being a sellout too. So I know they've been on a roll on that. So, when it comes to business wise, when it comes to ticket sales, they've been doing great for what they've been doing with the, smaller arena, smaller crowds. They've been doing great with that. So, props to them when it comes to that, at least.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. TNA, like I said, it's the hottest it's been in like nearly like 15 years. Like they have been crushing it as far as like their ticket sales and their business, that business perspective. And there's a lot of like buzz around TNA, and that's why I think that we pay attention to their booking decisions sometimes a little too closely, but close enough where we're like, man, this was the time to do it, to have people believe, pun intended, in following along with the product. But
yeah, we do it for everybody. So I mean that should be a positive thing, right? Because like we do it for everybody. We do it when WWE doesn't do it. We do it when AEW doesn't do it. We do it when NXT doesn't do it. So I think it's a good sign that we do care about like what they do with the booking in a way, because I'm like, we've been watching TNA for a long time. They've been around. A company has been around for what, over 20 years at this point too, which is kind of
now. Yeah.
Which is like pretty insane. So I mean, when it comes to that, I mean, of course, like if you're, I'm not saying like an actual wrestling fan, but like if you follow everything, all those things do matter. Like booking does matter. So I think that's a good thing. Like at least on this channel as well. Like if there's something we don't like, we'll say it, but we're not saying it to like degrade anybody or to downplay the company. We're just saying it so you guys could get better.
Yeah. And we never, like, the one thing that we rarely do on this channel is complain about the wrestlers, because I think that TNA has a really good roster. We're the only complaints or criticism that we ever have on TNA, WWE, AEW, New Japan is usually the booking. And that's what we talked about here. My one word or one phrase for TNA Bound for Glory was good, but not noteworthy. Like, I feel like this is like a good TNA pay-per-view, but not necessarily a good Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Like, if this is your biggest show of the year, the feel, the look of it look like your biggest show of the year because it was a sellout crowd. They were hot for everything. And the big title matches, most of them did deliver. But when you don't crown your hottest star, and then you close out the night with more or less, I love the Hardys. I've always loved the Hardys. I think they're one of the greatest tag teams of all time. But right now, they feel like a nostalgia act for TNA. So when you close out with them winning the tag team titles, I don't know how I can feel. Like, I was like, is that like the ending to a Bound for Glory? I really felt like how you would end a Bound for Glory pay-per-view is crown your hottest star in Joe Hendry. And I think then I would have been on this show being like, this was not only a good Bound for Glory, this was a great Bound for Glory.
Yeah, especially when it's like, I don't want to say younger talent, but homegrown talent, because Joe Hendry is a homegrown TNA talent, technically. I know he did a lot of stuff overseas, but technically, like, his first major company he signed for is TNA. So I thought that would have been the right move. And when it comes to the Hardys, I mean, again, I love the Hardys. Like, I love what they've done, but I mean, it kind of does feel like a nostalgia act. But then also it kind of just feels like TNA is trying to right any kind of wrongs that you could say AEW did with them. But at the same time, you can't really blame AEW for the direction they went with the Hardys because of obviously some of the legal issues that happened. So they kind of they didn't get hesitant. I just think that they made the move that, hey, we gave you a chance, and unfortunately, like, it is what it is. And they kind of, don't want to say moved on, but you saw the direction that they were taking the tag team with. And I just feel like TNA, because the Hardys have done so much for TNA as well. Like, I don't want to forget that. Like, they've done so much.
And they're a big reason why this hot streak has come. Like, them coming back into the company, they did like when they came back this summer, it was very much like a big move, and it was like, oh man, they got the Hardys back, they got the theme music and everything, and they did build to their title win as a big deal. I just don't necessarily feel like it should have been the main event of this show.
No, I agree with that, because it was, I mean, the match itself, I mean, I do got a lot to say about the match itself, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I do agree with it. I just think the placement. I think that was the biggest thing for me for the show. I think is the placement and some of the end results of what happened.
Yeah. So let's start off quickly with the pre-show. You had first up Ash and Heather, the Elegance, facing Isaiah Brookside and NXT's Brinlin Reese. This was set up on the most recent edition of TNA Impact. You had the concierge, George Iceman, coming out and introducing Ash and Heather by Elegance. They came dressed up as the devil and an angel, respectively. WWE NXT's Brendan Reese comes out first for the opposition, and then Zaya Brookside. She came out to a pretty good pop from the Detroit crowd. They were kind of the favorite team from the Detroit crowd, as Ash and Heather by Elegance took the heat in this matchup. Bunch of "you still suck" chants at the Angel and Devil duo as they took turns controlling Reese in the ring. We got a "we want Zaya" chant. So Zaya Brookside was very popular with this Detroit crowd. She came in on the hot tag, hitting a bunch of big moves, hits a broken wings in the corner. Reese tags back in after a big move, gets a close two on Ash. You get Reese hitting a big power spot after that, and seemingly has things won when Iceman interferes to a ton of heat from the Detroit crowd. You get Zaya Brookside on the outside, chasing him down as Detroit chants "kick his ass." She gets him down and starts choking him with his own sports coat. Meanwhile, Reese is hit with a Spanish Fly by Heather Reckless, and then the rarefied air by Ash for the 1-2-3. Iceman celebrates with Ash and Heather by Elegance in the ring to wrap up this opener. It was kind of fun. It was kind of there, but it was fine. I like the combination of Heather and Ash by Elegance. I do prefer our good friend Joe Pearl's name for them, Reckless Elegance, over them being Ash and Heather by Reckless. But I mean, and see, I'm saying Heather by Reckless. Heather by Elegance. I prefer the Reckless Elegance name, but this was fine to kind of establish them as a new team in the Knockouts Tag Team division, which always needs new teams, because it always feels like we have two teams at a time in the Knockouts Tag Team division. So it's glad to see they're building one up for the winners of the championship out on the main show. Any thoughts on Heather and Ash by Elegance getting the win here?
Match was fine. I thought the right team did win. Especially if you're trying to build up something, right? You're trying to build up a tag team. So I mean, the match, I think the match did its job for the most part, and I think it's a good pairing. I know a lot of people give Ashley a lot of shit, but I think her TNA stuff hasn't been bad, in my opinion. Like, I think it's been pretty presentable. She's been doing what she wants to do. And people have been complaining less about it. So, I mean, when I spoke to her in person a couple of months ago, I know she did say that TNA is basically giving her like a lot of like pull, a lot of like, not creative control, obviously, but a lot of the stuff, they're giving her a lot of input, and they're actually taking her input pretty seriously. So, I mean, that's good to see. So, she probably has something to do with it as well when it comes to the tag team.
Yeah, I'm glad for her, because I think she's done really good character work during her run in TNA this year. So I'm happy to see that she's satisfied with what they're doing there. We got our boy Power Driver Finisher in the chat saying, "Yo, what it do, THH, Josh, SP3 in chat. I know this is a TNA review, but SP3, I have to let you know, Collision had MXM and Outrunners against each other. The universe restored, I think." I will say, for the first time, a rare case, I watched Collision this morning, because I watched Bound for Glory live last night, but I watched Collision this morning, and I would say Collision lapped Dynamite this week. Collision was so much better than Dynamite. And I gave Dynamite like a 6. I would probably just give like Collision like a 7.5 or an 8, but it just felt like so much more focused and what it needed to be than what Dynamite was.
I haven't seen Collision yet, but I hold you to that because I didn't like Dynamite this week.
We got Joe Pearl in the chat. Thank you so much, Joe Pearl, for joining us. He says current place on the card and character is perfect for Ash, soon to be Knockouts tag champ. I agree. I think that she's well on her way with this new team, Ash and Heather by Elegance. Terrence saying TNA was Bound for Glory was a solid show. He says TNA is going to TNA by not putting the world title on the most over guy in the company in Joe Hendry is a epic failure. I mean, Terrence, I know you're probably joining us just now, but check out, well, we started off like the first 20 minutes talking about that decision before we even got into the show. So don't worry. But I will say my favorite part of the pre-show to the show, Josh, was the Hall of Fame inductions, because I thought it was a nice kind of tribute to someone who's like a behind-the-scenes feature, which I really feel like WWE should take a inspiration from that with their Warrior Award, and they should honor like behind-the-scenes people, like how TNA did here with Bob Ryder. I love all the tie-ins, because you had people from WWE, AEW talking about Bob Ryder on the clips, talking about him. Like Jeff Jarrett, you could tell he was backstage at an AEW taping. Sanjay Dutt as well. You had AJ Styles from his home in his video game chair just saying some stuff about Bob Ryder, as well as Kurt Angle, James Storm, Frankie Kazarian, Josh Matthews, all singing the praise of Bob Ryder. This led to Eric Young coming out at the podium at the end of the entrance ramp to give his induction speech. He said Bob Ryder, he says he was a close personal friend of his. He gives a speech about what a good person Bob was, and mentioning his passing and how he's watching now proudly. He is given credit for being along with Jeff and Jerry Jarrett as one of the handful of people responsible for TNA's existence. And when that wraps up, that you get a big ovation of thank you, Bob, from the Detroit crowd. This was classy and very well done. But the main reason why I'm saying the Hall of Fame inductions was the best part of the pre-show, I would say, and I've watched a lot of WWE Hall of Fame speeches, but Rhino's speech for this TNA Hall of Fame, this had me emotional. Like when he's talking about Heath Slater talking to his brother when he got cancer. He's making jokes about, Tommy Dreamer, all the people that he thanked, like Edge, Christian, and Joe Legend. Like, if you've been a fan of Rhino like me since 1998, 1999, when he came into ECW, man, this was so well done. He killed this speech. Tommy Dreamer was nice with the whole induction speech, talking about everything, that Rhino was everything a classic big man should be, but he was a big man at 5'10", so okay, Tommy. We all get what he means, though. Dreamer gives Rhino's long list of credentials from WWE, ECW, and TNA. Dreamer says Rhino looks and works as good as he did in his prime. And then he wraps up joking about Rhino, saying every year that it's going to be the Detroit Lions year. The fans in Detroit loved that and broke out a loud pro-Lions chant. Rhino is then introduced. He comes out in a red suit coat, and we get the "You deserve it" chant. He said that Tommy joked that he looked like an usher at a movie. He follows that up, and he gives the crowd some quips, and he says, "Come on, you're supposed to be on my side." When the crowd starts booing him a bit, Rhino's personality just shined through in this induction speech. Like, he says that he's never been never shown in decades of performing in front of the camera. Like, he was just so charming, so endearing here, and just genuine stuff, thanking his family, thanking Paul Heyman, thanking Jim Cornette for giving him a chance, the WWE family. He thanks Triple H for never stop believing in him. He thanks Jim Ross and Pat Patterson for always believing in him and pushing him to get a second chance. He thanks, like I said, Christian, Edge and Joe Legend for always being his friend no matter what. He says Dreamer is like a brother to him. He thanks Johnny Swinger for just making him laugh all the time. He says, keep swinging, baby. He thanks Scott D'Amore for training him. He mentions having 2 minutes left, and then he goes into the most emotional part of this, thanking Heath Slater. And you could see the tears like well up in his eyes, talking about how Heath Slater is a great human being. And in 2017, his brother Jim was diagnosed with cancer, given a death sentence, and he only lived 2.5 more months after it. But he would talk to him, and he could see the cancer go away and the life come back in his voice. He says for a moment in time, he would give his brother moments in life. He thanks Heath again, and he leads the fans in chanting "Gore, Gore, Gore." An absolutely exceptional Hall of Fame speech. What did you think?
Overall, Hall of Fame thing, I actually do agree with you that I think WWE should do more of that stuff, like more like backstage people. Because they're just as important as the performers. Like, I get it. There's, the talent are going to be the talent. They're the ones that are on cameras. They show, they're the ones that put in the showcases. So when it comes to that, I do understand, but people behind the scenes are just as important. And then some of them are even there, like you're talking about like 20, 30, 40 years. So sometimes they're even there well past a lot of these careers, So I do agree with that. And I thought that was a nice touch with how they did it. And then the people that were involved talking about him, I thought that was like really nice. And then when it comes to Randall's speech, I honestly thought it was like one of the best speeches that I've probably ever heard, to be honest with you, when it comes to like inductions and, and I'm talking about even like in sports or anything. Like, that might be high praise, maybe a little too high praise, but at the same time, I like when stuff are like, it's very genuine, when it feels very authentic. I felt like what he said was very real, very authentic. When it comes to the WWE ones, there's some that are like, like you will remember and they're very good. But I think sometimes what I really don't like about the WWE ones is that it's kind of like, it kind of feels kind of forced, where you're just like, you kind of have to praise the company. It kind of feels like kind of like, for example, I know a lot of people might not agree with me on this, but the Paul Heyman one, a lot of stuff he said was like good, like he delivered good stuff, and a lot of stuff he said was great. But I kind of just felt like he was over glorifying the company at times, where it's just like, bro, like, come on, like, what are you doing? Like,
And I say this as someone
which
who
was kind of a
enjoyed the
little
Paul
weird to me,
Heyman
but I
speech.
get it because he's a
I
company
do
guy.
agree with the Triple H stuff, especially. I do agree with the Triple H stuff was just like, all right, we get it.
That was like
we
too
get it.
much, bro. And then you had to like stand up and shake his. It's like, bro, like this is like so unnecessary. Like, just thank everybody else who actually, like. I'm not saying like Triple H has done nothing for him. I think Triple H realizes how important Paul Heyman is, but it's just like, what? Like, come on, like, what are we doing? Like that's how I kind of felt like when it came to that. When it comes to Rhino's speech, he thanked not only a lot of people, but I thought the Heath Slater one was really nice because, like, obviously we've seen a relationship they've had since WWE when they were a tag team, and Heath Slater, like I've always felt with Heath Slater, I always felt like he probably deserved a little bit more, right? I'm not saying like, oh, he should have been a world champion or anything like that, but I do feel like he probably, like if he was given an opportunity, I think he probably would have done well in certain things. Because he's just an overall good guy, to be honest with you. Like, you're talking about, if you take out the wrestling, he's overall a good guy. And I actually I love the fact that not only he mentioned Heath Slater, but then he gave that story about, about his brother and, all that stuff that was going on, like some real shit, so when it came to that, I thought that was like probably the best part in my opinion. Like, you could see not only he gets emotional, but it's like, you're talking about a guy like, again, they've had history and, like, you know, and it was kind of thrown in. That's what kind of makes it crazy too, right?
Yeah.
It's like their tag team was kind of thrown in, and then now they kind of just seem like they're like meant to like be a tag team or to like, you know, be on each other's side. Like it makes sense, and it showed with his emotion. Like, yeah, this is why that they're always paired up, and it makes sense, and I'm 100% fine with that.
100% agree with you there. Yeah, we got Call Me Mr. Bondo who agrees, saying best speeches are always from the heart and unscripted. Yeah. That speech by Rhino, definitely. If you haven't seen it, go out of your way to watch that one because it's so good. And then finally, the pre-show ended, Josh, with the Call Your Shot Gauntlet. They shift right into it because Rhino went a little bit over his allotted 2 minutes left when he told that Heath Slater story. So we get Frankie Kazarian, of course, being the number one entrant after losing on Impact this week. For Zachary Wentz of the Rascals makes his return to TNA for the first time since his street fight with Wes Lee on NXT. The bell sounds and they get right to it. A nice little fast 2-minute opening between the two men. The countdown clock appears and it brings out Jake Something at number 3. He hit some big Impact moves on both Wentz and Kazarian. Something and Kazarian both try to throw Wes over the top rope when the countdown clock appears again. And Trey Miguel of the Rascals is in the 4th position. We get the Rascals teaming up. The crowd really comes to life. Miguel is just so good in the ring. Like I need them to push the either the Rascals themselves or Trey Miguel on his own because he's so good and underrated in the ring. We get Let's Go Rascal chants for them when the countdown clock hits again, and out comes Hammerstone, who is now kind of the tag team partner of Jake Something. They work together. We get Hammerstone powerbombing Wentz onto Miguel. Kazarian tries to order Hammerstone around, but that backfired as him and Something beat up Kazarian and hit a big double clothesline. Rohit Raju returns at the number 7 position. He comes out. That's, I guess, the big surprise of this whole Call Your Shot Gauntlet. Laredo Kid comes out. He gets the Lucha chant, but he proves once again that TNA doesn't like luchadors all that much because within seconds, he's eliminated. Miguel works on Hammerstone outside of the ropes when he's on the apron, but Sutton hits him from behind. Hammerstone then launches Miguel onto Laredo Kid on the floor. The countdown clock winds down again, and out comes our boy, Sami Callihan. He comes in and hits the Cactus Driver in 97. Hammerstone gets eliminated at this point. We get John Schuyler of the Good Hands coming out. We get Bohinder Guja coming out at the next entrant. He comes in, he does the skin the cat and comes back in. We get Trent Seven making his return to TNA. He gets a big pop in his now. I guess he's living in Detroit in the United States when he's not in the UK. So he's got a Detroit Pistons towel and gets a hometown pop for that. KZ Navarra comes in next. He tries to go at Sami Callihan, but Sami Callihan just takes care of him very quickly. We get Rohit Raju and Guja. They eliminate themselves. John Schuyler gets eliminated. And then finally, Rhino comes in. He gets a big pop coming in after his Hall of Fame induction. The crowd goes berserk as he immediately eliminates Callihan. He then eliminates multiple other people like in quick succession. They then tell us commentated that he tied Chris Sabin with 13 matches at TNA Bound for Glory event. The countdown clock winds down and we get our first knockout of the matchup, Tasha Steelz. We got a nice little spot where Tasha Steelz starts twerking in front of Rhino, and Rhino makes a look, and he actually mentioned that his girlfriend's in attendance, so that's what made that like, I don't know. They do the Brock and Gunther style big stare down with one another. Then Li Ying Ming or Mi Ying Li, the former Xia Li, she's the second knockout entrant in the Gauntlet. She comes in and she eliminates Tasha Steelz. We get Jason Hodge coming in. Frankie Kazarian clotheslines Lee at this point, and then eliminates her. We get Leon Slater also coming in. Casey Navarro is eliminated at this point. We get Kazarian. He like I said, eliminates Lee. Then you get Jonathan Gresham coming in at number 18, JDC at number 19, and then finally AJ Francis coming in. We get rapid fire eliminations. Gresham, 7, Hodge, all eliminated in Chris's session. AJ Francis cleaning house. We get Wentz, Hurricane Radas, Francis over the ropes, but something provides the assist from the floor, and he yanks Wentz out of the ring after Wentz eliminated him. We get the gore, gore, gore chants as it's Rhino, JDC, AJ Francis, and Frankie Kazarian. So Rhino's pretty much the only babyface in this match and the final four. He eliminates JDC. He turns around and gets hit with the gore by AJ Francis. The crowd completely boosts the shit out of that. AJ tries to eliminate Rhino, but Rhino backdoors him and clotheslines him out of the ring to a massive pop. So our final two is Rhino and Frankie Kazarian. The crowd is fully behind Rhino, but just like a minute into the final two, Kazarian low blows Rhino. The referee didn't see it, and within a minute, he pins him 1, 2, 3 to win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet. The commentary team talk about him being able to call his shot for a title shot of his choosing at any time or in the next year. And once he won this, I was like, oh man, TNA, I know what y'all about to do. I thought that would be the way they would screw over Joe Hendry. They'd at least have Joe Hendry win the title, and then Frankie Kazarian, the special referee in the TNA World Title matchup, he cashes in. So I did think it was too obvious, and that's why I didn't predict it yesterday on our final predictions or our preview. I didn't predict Kazarian to win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet because it seemed too obvious. But in hindsight, it probably was the best choice because it did add an extra caveat to the TNA World Title matchup. But what did you think about the Call Your Shot Gauntlet and Kazarian winning?
The matchup was pretty fun. I thought everybody did their part in the match. Usually with the Call Your Shot Gauntlets, usually it's pretty chaotic. So I mean, when it comes to the match itself, I thought it was pretty fun. You're not really looking for a technical kind of aspect of things. You're just looking for being entertained and who's winning. As far as Kazarian winning, I mean, it was like, I don't know. I didn't like it that much, but I thought, like you said, I didn't like it that much, but then I'm like, oh, fuck. This they're probably going to use this for the title match. But then that didn't even happen. At the end of the end result, I mean, he almost tried to. He tried to a few times. I get it, but it did add to it a little bit because it gave you suspense, but it was more of the fact I'm like, Joe didn't win. And so it was like, all right, cool. I don't know where they're going from here. I mean, overall, the matchup was fun. Nothing to really complain about, in my opinion.
That is true. That is fair. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty fun way to close out the pre-show. I gave the match itself 3.25. I actually give it 3.25 because it was a fun gauntlet to watch. The opening tag match, I probably would give that 2.5 stars. But let's go into the main card as you kicked off the show in the best way possible. The X Division Championship matchup. You get Speedball Mike Bailey versus El Hijo del Vikingo. We get before that, we get an excellent cold open video package that is going over Detroit and the history of TNA in Detroit. Sort of callback to Sting winning the World Championship at Bound for Glory in 2006 in Detroit. So that was a nice little tidbit in the opening video package. And then back in the arena, the theme of El Hijo del Vikingo hits to kick things off. After he settles, then Speedball Mike Bailey comes in. We get holy shit chants before Speedball's theme had even finished because people were ready for this matchup. You get "This is awesome" chants before the two men even touch, so it had the big fight feel, obviously. They shake hands and get in like a Street Fighter video game style fighting stance between one another. Halifan talks about this being the highest grossing Bound for Glory show in 11 years. Vikingo hits a turning spot in the ring that looked much of his offense was just completely unbelievable. He hits another twisting splash to Bailey after diving through the ropes out on the floor. He goes for a big high spot off the ropes back in the ring, but Bailey is able to move and avoids it. Vikingo stops and the referee checks on his knee after he comes down and basically is favoring his previously injured knee. But Speedball basically takes advantage of this. I thought this matchup, the best thing that they did is they added a bit of psychology to this and a little bit of story with the previous injured knee of Vikingo being a focus of Speedball throughout this matchup. He goes after the knee, he works it over a couple of times, but then when we get into like the last like 10 minutes of this matchup, it's just completely insane. Like you get at one point, Vikingo slides to the outside trying to take out Bailey. Bailey gets on the apron, jumps up to the top rope. You think he's going to do an Asahi moonsault, which he literally does, but he instead does a sky twister to the outside. You get Hurricane Radas. You get one of the most impressive spots of the whole thing is when Vikingo gets on the ring post and does a fucking flying Canadian destroyer onto the apron. That was insane. You get Speedball goes for the moonsault double knees and he hits the apron. So now he's got a slightly injured knee. Speedball hits the Ultimo Weapon, but Vikingo is able to kick out. Vikingo continuously tried to go for the 630, but it was very smart psychology that Speedball was always ready for it. He always broke it up. He knows that that's like the kill shot for Vikingo, so he never allowed him to hit that. In the end, though, he catches him on the top rope when he tries to go for the 630 for like a third time, and he hits this smooth, I think he calls it the Fusion Rain or something like that, or Emerald Rain, where he does a float over fisherman Spanish fly. Gets the 1, 2, 3 in this matchup. This match was fast paced, high octane. This was a balls to the wall banger in every way possible. I give it 4.5 stars. Speedball Mike Bailey is like my favorite X Division champion in recent memory. He needs to hold this title forever and just kick off every pay-per-view for TNA, and it's always going to give you possibly the best match of the night. I don't know if it is that for me, because there was another match that I think I rated the same as this one, but 4.5 stars is just a tremendous way to kick off a show like this, and Speedball and Vikingo delivered. What did you think?
Pretty much the same. The match was really fast paced. I felt like both guys did pick it up like later on during the match, and it just kind of just went like wasn't really stopping. It was like really no room to breathe. And sometimes that's good. That's a good thing. I think these guys' styles fits that, because there's sometimes where in matches where sometimes you would need like that kind of like little downtime for it to like kind of like sink in. So both of these guys' styles usually like they're so fast paced that you usually don't really need that. Kind of reminds me of like a Will Ospreay match where like everything is just like fucking like next move, and that's how the match felt like to me. But I also do agree with like the psychology point. Like I was like, oh shit, they added a little bit, because it's not so much with Vikingo matches like, oh, he doesn't use it as much, but because he has that lucha libre style that I know a lot of people. There's people who love it, there's people who don't love it, or there's people who just don't understand it because of like they kind of stay away from that kind of stuff. But it's all about the fast pace. It's all about like the movement for the lucha matches. So for them to implement that a little bit, kind of it for me actually added to the match. And like you said, man, Speedball is fucking amazing, and hopefully they don't get the belt off of him again just so it could be shown on NXT.
That pissed me off too. You do not have a be the first person to beat Mustafa Ali, and then he drops the title a month later. But hey, it gave us that great match with him and Zachary Wentz last month. But man, he's delivering bangers, and it's slowly but surely he's becoming like a guy you can count on to always deliver at these Bound for Glory shows. Because I thought his match with Frankie Kazarian 2 years ago was great, and I think that kicked off Bound for Glory. Last year at Bound for Glory, he had TNA's Match of the Year with Will Ospreay, and now this year another banger with Vikingo. Speedball is one of the most reliable workers in this entire company, and they need to keep relying on him. And like I've told him a couple of times, because I think I've interviewed him now 2 or 3 times. He's my favorite wrestler. He's my favorite wrestler in the world.
I mean, I could see why, because he's really good, and I think what benefits him too is like you said, like he's a guy that could use in the opening show. You want to get the crowd hot. Speedball is the right guy to go to. You need something in the middle that, all right, we need something in the middle that, you know, we need people to be invested. Speedball is your guy. We need a great main event. Speedball is your guy. So I think there's a lot of benefit to him that you could really place him in any part of the card and it doesn't hurt him.
Not at all. Not at all. We got I Make Beast as 5-star banger. And this is coming off Speedball getting another 5-star matchup with Konosuke Takeshita for Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. And I praise that. This was after you left the show, but that was my match of the week last week, was Takeshita and Speedball, because they went off in that matchup for Maple Leaf Pro. So he turns around a week later and gives us another classic here against Vikingo. Terrence in the chat says, I checked out the start of the show. You fellas absolutely kept it 100. Chef's kiss. Keep on backing, fellas. The Tyler Black analogy was perfect, and telling the difference in Cody and Joe is also right. Thank you so much, Terrence. We appreciate that. And call me Mr. Bonda. Looking out for the fellas. Yes, Meteor Rain was the name of the move. And yeah, I had never seen him do that. I usually see Speedball finish his matches with Ultimate Weapon or what is it? Now I'm forgetting his other finisher. Yeah. I saw it's either one or two finishers, but that was the first time I saw a Meteor Rain, and I was like, God damn, this guy just has an arsenal of moves he could finish people off with.
It's like Gunther.
Oh, the Flamingo driver. The Flamingo driver. That's the other one.
Right. It's like Gunther. Gunther has like fucking like 10 ways to he finishes matches.
Exactly. Yeah, and the Power Driver finisher saying he could do a 6-minute match, he could do a 60-minute match. Yes, Speedball. He just does it all. He does it all. Next up, you had the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team titles up for grabs, Josh, as it was Spitfire versus NXT's Wendy Chu and Rosemary. We had Matthew Raywall and Tom Hannafin, who I think is a pretty good team. I think they're a really good team. They've developed good chemistry with one another, where they always, even if you're not watching TNA every week, they kind of keep you up to date and fill in the blanks for stuff that you need to know with all the different matches that are going on. Wendy Chu and Rosemary come out together as the challengers for the Knockouts tag team titles here. Spitfire duo, Jody Threat and Danny Luna make their way to the ring. The bell sounds, and it is Threat and Chu who kick things off. Threat takes the early offense lead before tagging in Luna. Chu pulls Luna's hair and brings her into their corner. We get some shit with the pillow used as a cushion for the heel challengers, resulting in the poor pillow being suplexed out of the ring. Yes, they did a suplex out of the ring for a pillow. At that point, I think I checked out on this matchup because my notes got smaller. She tags in Chu, and the two set up Luna up for a double suplex off of the middle rope, but Luna escapes and powerbombs both women. She makes a hot tag to Jody Threat. She comes in and delivers blows to Chu and Rosemary over and over again until running into double knees by Chu. Rosemary accidentally blasts Chu, and then Threat trips Chu onto Rosemary, draped over the middle rope. She hits a double knees on both women. She tags Luna in, and they two hit the pressure drop for the 1-2-3 to retain the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team titles. After the matchup, you get Rosemary spearing Wendy True. She then grabs her lifeless head and lifts it up and kisses her before leaving her laying. So that's the end of the Wendy True and Rosemary tag team, which they got a lot more out of that tag team that basically felt like it was a one-off. That I basically felt like a one-off when they did that whole angle where Rosemary coming in for Wendy True to verse Kalani Jordynne. They stretched this out for, 2 months, and they got a shot here with the Knockouts tag team titles. I like Jody Threat. I like Danny Luna. I really like Rosemary because I feel like her character, despite staying the same, has always been able to evolve very well. Wendy True, I like her as a performer. I hate this character for her. And I did not like this match all that much. I gave it 2 stars. What did you think?
It was. I'm kind of on the same boat. I'm trying to be more easy on this matchup because, like, knowing like who's in the match, I know they're gonna try to do like all like the gimmicky stuff. Like, so I don't try to be as harsh when it comes to stuff like that because, like, it is what it is, right? There are certain wrestlers who, you know, they're more about gimmicks or within the match, right? More storytelling, more gimmicks. That pillow, that pillow spot was just like, why? Like, why is this a thing? Like, I didn't like it when I saw it on NXT, and I didn't like it now. So I'm like, please, like, whose idea is this? Like, please, can we just stop? Like, can we just stop this? Because I think Wendy should be doing better than whatever is going on. I think I know, you know, and I get it. They're trying to develop a character, whatever the case may be, but it's like it's not good.
Yeah, it's just I don't think it's getting over with anybody, and if it's not getting over with anybody, you need to try something else. You need to try something else with her. And she was much more entertaining when she was the baby face Wendy True with the sleeping
Like,
gimmick.
You know, and it's a little ridiculous.
Spooky napper Wendy
Yeah,
True.
like, you know,
Spooky napper Wendy True ain't working for me, fam.
No, I'm saying, like, yeah, because I get it, right? Like, because even when she was babyface, like, the gimmick itself is like, I mean, it's goofy, but it works more as a babyface because honestly, like, she doesn't need to do much, right? But now, like, you're trying to do this heel thing, and you're giving her more matches. Like, she had the title match at that NXT like PLE, and that wasn't a good matchup. Fortunately, it was not a good matchup, and then you're doing stuff like this. I don't know, man. Like, I'm just trying to figure out like whose idea is this. Like, something needs to either change or just like, can we just forget like it happened and she wakes up at the right side of the bed or something at this point?
She wakes up on the right side of the bed. She gets rid of the spooky stuff, and she just becomes happy-go-lucky napper Wendy Chu, which was much better than spooky napper. Mr. Bond does say TNA needs to get the Hex Killer Bees, Danny B and Charity King, and our Alex Windsor and Nina Samuels in the Knockouts tag division for 6 months or so to freshen up the stagnant division. I've pretty much accepted that this division is like a 2 tag teams at a time division. It's, yeah. It is sad though that WWE's Women's Tag Team Championships and division seems to have more teams than TNA's right now.
Yeah, and they're also like in the same boat where it's like thrown ins, but they're trying to like, at least with the Jade and Bianca stuff, like the criticisms that we've given, when it comes to that, it actually has gotten better because like it seems like they're putting more of an importance on this title reign than the first one. And I mean, that's all we really ask for. We ask for like consistency, or like, hey, if you want, like, all right, like you gave these ladies the tag titles again. Can we find a way to make it matter or to spotlight them good? And you know, it's not all the way there, but it's definitely better than the first run. Like they even got a PLE match out of it. So I mean, that's all you really ask for. You ask for consistency. You ask for something that matters. You know, when it comes to the knockouts, like I always felt like when it comes to the knockouts in general, like when it comes to like the knockouts division and TNA, they're always, a level above a lot of other like companies. Like I always felt like they've always done well. They've done either well or great when it comes to their divisions. With the tag team stuff, is there with women titles, like tag titles or like tag teams, is usually a lot harder because we don't really have a lot of tag teams, right? And I think that's always been a problem, like anywhere. Like if you really look at it, right? Like you see the men's like tag divisions, or like there are like a lot of teams that are like established and they're together. A lot of these women tag teams, they're usually a lot of them are thrown in, and then you get what you get. Like when it comes to that. Even though I think TNA, like they've done certain things where they put like two women together and they get established, and then they have like a good ring name, like stuff like that. But I do
Like
feel like what you
Spitfire.
said, yeah, like something like that, right? Like they've got together and stuff like that. But I do agree, like it kind of feels like it's like two tag teams at a time when it comes to that, instead of like a cohesive like actual tag division. But at the same time, if your women's division is not that deep, that's why it's a little bit harder as well.
Also true. Gia Mantler interviews special guest referee Frankie Kazarian, the Call Your Shot Gauntlet winner. She congratulates him on his win. He is shown reading the Earl Hebner autobiography, which I thought was a great touch. Gia Miller walks up and tells her he's busy reading and studying for his special referee assignment, the self-proclaimed king of TNA. Then talks briefly about his plans as the Call Your Shot Gauntlet winner. Joe Hendry and Nic Nemeth are shown making their arrivals to the building earlier today for tonight's main event or triple main event matchup. Then we get Josh Alexander going one-on-one with Steve Macklin, a battle of former TNA World Champions. Macklin got a good response. He got new theme music coming out here. Then you get Josh Alexander coming out, only to be rushed by Macklin in the entranceway. Big brawl breaks out between the two men in the entrance tunnel and then down to ringside. Hannafin and Ray Wall talk about Sinner and Saint not being at the building tonight due to travel issues, and noting that Macklin gets Alexander all by himself after being zip-tied and attacked on Thursday. After a couple of minutes of beating Alexander at ringside, Alexander finally starts to fight back and takes over. He does the old school Bret Hart style figure four around the ring post to soften up Macklin's leg. He then enters the ring and the referee finally calls for the bell. Alexander immediately rushes across the ring and goes straight to work on the leg, softening it up. We get walking wiener chants. The crowd was giving Alexander a shitstorm of heat and chants, just getting under his skin. Alexander blatantly low blows Macklin after the referee takes a bump. While the referee is still down, Alexander zip ties Macklin's hands behind his back. Macklin, though, starts to fight back while his hands are basically handcuffed. The referee tries to get him untied, but Macklin just chooses to keep moving from him and starts diving through the ropes and splashes onto Alexander on the floor. Back in the ring, he does the same thing, refusing to wait for the referee to cut his hands free, opting to instead land a double knees to the walking weapon. Again, Macklin refuses to get untied by the referee. This time it backfires as Macklin is hit with a tombstone by Alexander, but he kicks out at 2. Dangerous stuff there as he goes for the cover, and even with his hands tied behind his back, Alexander is able to kick out. Macklin eventually gets up, and Alexander goes for the C4 spike, but Macklin avoids it. Alexander then hits a German suplex to Macklin, who basically no-sells it, and with his hands still tied behind his back, Alexander then finally gets him in the ankle lock. The commentary points out that Macklin can't even tap out, and the fans are even screaming that at this point, but he can't grab the ropes as well. He's basically stuck in it, and eventually he passes out from the extreme leg pain. Alexander picks up the victory here. I thought that this was a very intense, hard-hitting matchup. I like the way that they protected Macklin with the zip ties and his hands being tied behind his back. But I think that the multiple times of the referee trying to untie him and him refusing to do that was a little overdone, but still a really damn good matchup here. I give it 3 3/4 stars. What did you think?
It was actually it was like a really good match. You know, Steve Macklin has really come to his own when it comes to him being in TNA. Like, you're talking about somebody who, you know, like when it comes to like his WWE run, where it was kind of like he was kind of taken more like a joke, where like when you hear it's like, who the fuck is this guy? Or, you know, no, there was really no real attention on him, and then he was put in a stable that a lot of people just didn't care about. And then unfortunately one of the members is not really a good person. That didn't help him at all. And then, you know, when he got his release, he's made the most he made the most of his opportunity in TNA, and I think this is no different. The babyface change, like, you know, I don't mind it too much, because I was like, oh, this is something new for him, and he's pretty over too as a babyface. Like, people like him. So when it comes to that, I thought like that was a nice kind of touch, because like if this would have been a couple months ago, Alexander would have been babyface and then Macklin would have been the heel. So it's a nice kind of change. Like, I was like, oh shit, Alexander heel. And I think that it ended up working out for the match. As far as like the finish, I do agree. Like, I thought it was maybe a little too over the top, but at the same time, I also get the aspect of like, you know, him passing out still makes him look good, because he, you know, people say all the time, like, hey, like if you lose like that, then technically you didn't lose, even though like on the record books it's a loss, but technically you didn't tap out, you didn't give up, you didn't get pinned. So it's a different kind of aspect. Like, you just gave up, like you took the pain and that's it. Like, your body gave out. You technically didn't give up. It's just your mind and your body gave up. Like, that's just more of that aspect. So I mean, yeah, like I get it's a little bit over the top, because I saw it, I was just like, what are they doing? Like, let's keep it.
I think that Alexander probably should have hit the C4 spike and then put him in the ankle lock, because then I could believe he was knocked out with the C4 spike, and then he just puts a submission on him because he doesn't believe he can get the pin with the C4.
Yeah, and I you see like something like that, it seems simple and it seems like it could work, but like the other way, I was like, yeah, it's a little too, but you know, TNA is gonna love like their over the top stuff, so because they needed that here. But I mean, overall, it was a great match in my opinion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I agree. I think that Macklin is exceeded my expectations as a heel, but I think I really love this Josh Alexander. I mean, with Macklin as a babyface, I think he's exceeded my expectations, but I really, really love Josh Alexander as a heel. Like, the heat he was getting with the walking wiener and then the booze he was getting, he just generates a whole bunch of heat, and he needs wins like this. That's why I was the only one on our preview who said Josh Alexander was going to win, because I've seen him lose so much since he turned heel. He needed a legitimate win over a former world champion here, so I was glad he got it.
Yeah, and then also, like, you know, if this is kind of the change that you need, you can't have him keep losing. And it's like, what was the point of the heel turn? The heel turn was because he was frustrated. It was because he was pissed off. It was because of the opportunities he felt like he was getting. So then you turn him heel and then you just have him lose. It's kind of like, it's kind of ass backwards in my opinion. So I do feel like he needed to win. Macklin, again, doesn't hurt from the loss. Again, it's not only because of the way he lost, but I mean, it's completely over. Like, you know, again, like, in my opinion, doesn't hurt him.
Yeah. And I make beats. I know some of y'all in the chat said Josh Alexander was gonna win, but I'm talking about me, Shad, and Joel. I was the only one who said Josh Alexander was gonna win that one. Yeah, I think both guys kind of have doing really well in their new roles for sure, and this was a really good matchup. Next up, we have the TNA Digital Media and International Wrestling Championships up for grabs as we got Matt Cardona challenging the champion PCO. Before that, we see footage of Masha Slamovich and Jordynne Grace arriving at the building. We get the pre-match video for this next matchup. It's Monsters Ball, but the one touch that they didn't add is we didn't see them locked up in the basement before this match. I'm an old school TNA fan. I like my Monster Balls matchup when they tell me these two guys have been locked in the basement since the night prior, and that's why it's a Monsters Ball. That's the Monsters Ball. It's not just a no DQ matchup. You have to lock the participants in a basement before they have the match. So follow your own rules, TNA. Follow your own rules. But we get Cardona coming out to Always Ready, the indie god. He's got a Death Match Busters, Ghostbusters outfit on. PCO comes out to a big pop from the crowd. The bell sounds, and we're off with this one. They say it's the 59th ever Monsters Ball match in TNA history. Jesus Christ, that's a lot.
That's I thought it was like way less than that. This at 59. I'm like, that's kind of like a good thing. I'm like, oh, maybe you guys need to cut down.
Did y'all have like what, a month? Like your first couple of years? Like, God damn, that's a lot.
Damn,
but
I thought AEW had a lot of Texas death matches, but sheesh.
59. We get PCO no selling some stuff. He beheads Cardona with a big lariat. Cardona sidesteps PCO and charges at him full speed, guides him through the ropes where he crashes and burns on the floor. PCO I always know a PCO match. He's going to take 1 to 2 to 3 bumps that make me very uncomfortable. And we got that in this matchup. Cardona sets up, uses one of the Bound for Glory chairs, which he yells about not having his face on it because there's multiple wrestlers on it. Then he sets that up in the ring. He sets up a door in between the two chairs. Then he starts putting other chairs underneath. He puts like 4 chairs underneath the door. PCO gets advantage of him, but then Cardona reverses and power bombs him through the door onto the chairs. I was just like, oh God, PCO is. I feel like we're like 10 years away from PCO being in a wheelchair. He has to be in a wheelchair when his career is eventually over. Cardona, that is true. Cardona pulls out a sack full of thumbtacks out from under the ring. He grabs a handful of them, puts them in PCO's mouth. Then he hits the reboot, the old broski boot, right to his mouth. So he probably has thumbtacks in his mouth. He hits Raylio silence, but only gets a 2 count. He then gets the thumbtacks and one by one starts poking them into PCO's cheek. Oh my God, into his forehead. He slams his head down, so he gets them in his head. PCO runs and splashes onto him. At another point, gets a close 2. Now we see PCO pull out a second black bag, and he pulls out tons and tons of thumbtacks. Cardona, who has blood all over his pants leg now, heads out to the floor. He gets a barbed wire baseball bat in neon green. He tries to stab PCO in the face with it, who fights back and eventually chokeslams him onto a pile of tacks. And then he hits the PCO salt for the 1, 2, 3. This was a fun, violent brawl. This was what you expect from a Monsters Ball, what you expect from a Cardona and PCO no DQ style matchup here. So I thought it was a pretty fun matchup to watch. I give it 3.5 stars. What did you think?
Same. I thought it was pretty. It was a fun matchup. Man, God bless PCO, because man, I don't know how he keeps doing it. Like honestly, at his age and the crazy bumps he's taking it, but hey, man, he's a professional. You know, as long as he signs off on that and he knows what he's doing, I can't be too upset. I can't really I can't really knock the guy, because again, anybody who knows better, it is him. So he knows his own body, he knows how he feels, and he knows the risks that he's taking. But it is funny because every time we always see it, like when we see these spots, we're always like, one thing that we always worried about is like, oh man, like how long can he keep doing this? And it's how many years later and he's still doing it. So
Man, I was seeing Pierre Lafette back in the 90s, man. I remember him when he was with the Cabrecas. Like, he's been doing this for years.
yeah, and it's just
The amazing French Canadians in WCW as well. I remember that too.
yeah, and it's kind of crazy that it seems like he's doing more now than he did then. So it's like it's crazy, but at the same, like at the end of the day, if the performer's okay with it and they sign off on it and they know what they're getting themselves into, by all means, But I mean, overall, I thought it was a fun matchup. Pretty violent, what I expected. I do agree, like you said, with the rules. Like, hey, this is a Monsters Ball match. Stick to the fucking T, like stick to the fucking rules. So I get that. Like, I do agree with that. But overall, I mean, it was a great matchup.
Then you had Mike Santana going one-on-one with Moose. They did the Road to style pre-match video with the two men. Great promos from both of them. We did see hip-hop star Westside Gunn in the front row during Moose's entrance. We get Mike Santana, who comes out to a big reaction. He comes through the crowd as he usually does. We get big chants at the opening bell, a spin the block, and Moose. The two start off with a big stare down at the sound of the bell. Santana charges at Moose, and the two immediately start brawling out on the floor. After this continues for a few minutes, the match resumes inside the ring, where Santana starts to fight back into competitive mode. Moose cuts off his comeback short, however, proceeds to settle into very comfortable in the driver's seat offense, wearing down Santana. But Santana comes back. He starts firing off. Man, Santana was just busting out everything. This man was doing dives to the outside. He did an acai moonsault. Dude is like 245 pounds of pure muscle. Like, it's like the Santana that we saw in his first run in TNA ain't the Santana that was in AEW, and that's the Santana that came out of it. This guy is so built now. But he busts out a 450 splash. I was like, dude, yo, where the fuck, how is he gonna be denied? Like, yo, I appreciate, and we shouted him out on yesterday's podcast because he had a couple of things we didn't agree with, but I gotta give it up to Ebo of Wrestle Paris, who went off on his social media last night. He's like, yo, Santana didn't want to hold the tag rope. He didn't want to settle for Rampage. So he bet on himself, and he is proven. He is 100% right. Santana is proving that he is a top guy, that he's a main eventer. And for me and Josh, who were a part of that New York City indie wave, going to shows. Josh used to help out at shows, and we saw Santana start off over there before he even came to TNA. Like, this match made me so proud to be a Santana fan for way back when, because, yo, he proved that he is ready for the bright lights. He is ready to be a world champion in this matchup because he showed off his entire arsenal. He was doing 450s, doing the big power moves. He was hard hitting, heavy hitting. This match really brought out like a heavyweight slugfest type of feel to it. You get JDC of the system tries to get involved. Santana hits him with spin the block. He turns right around into Moose, hitting the no jackhammer needed spear, but he kicks out at 2. Moose is absolutely shocked after that. Then he tries to pick him up. He tries to go for another spear, but Santana catches him with the spin the block, the discus clothesline, turns Moose inside out. 1, 2, 3. Santana has defeated a former TNA World Champion, a former face of the franchise. He calls himself that all the time in Moose, and he has made history in becoming the first person to beat every member of the system in one-on-one competition. Yo, Santana, strap the rocket to him because this guy he's next up. Joe Pearl said that on the preview, and I'm going to echo it here. He's next up. If you're not going to crown Joe Hendry, you made that choice, and it was a choice. You need to make the choice that if you're not going to crown Joe Hendry, you crown Santana because you got yourself a main event star that is homegrown in the making. Despite having runs in AEW, he is homegrown because his first stardom was in TNA. He has all the makings to be their next Josh Alexander, a guy that started off in an established tag team that made history, that was a mainstay of the tag team division, and he has grown before our eyes into a main event star. Even despite this match having one spot where I think that Moose tried to do the sky high from the top rope, and it completely went wrong. I still love this match. This match was a great heavyweight slugfest. I gave it 4 stars. What did you think about this matchup here?
Same thing. Santana showed the fuck out, you know. And you know, when it comes to Santana in general, you know, I'll be very honest when it comes to like my take when it came to Santana. I've always liked his mentality. I've always liked the fact that, you know, he feels like he wants to do more, right? And I've always respected that. It was just more of the work that I was like, I don't know if this guy could be a top guy because I haven't seen a lot from him. You know, I need to see something that could make me believe, because you could like somebody and you could like have so much respect for somebody. Like with me, like, you know, like on a personal level, I have a respect for Santana, right? And I love the fact, like, I love his drive, I love his motivation. But when it comes to a business like the wrestling business, it's like there's so many guys who are just better. So you have to put in the work to see, like, all right, like, you don't have to be better than those guys, but you basically proved yourself that you could be a top guy. And I feel like even before this match, like with TNA, like he's been proving that. Like he's been proving singles matches he could put on. You know, and again, last night was no different to me. At least me personally, it was no different to me. But there was some new stuff that I did see from him that I was like, holy shit, like now they have another guy they could really build up. And I always felt like with TNA, they actually do pretty good stuff when it comes to that, building like a champion or like somebody, because we've seen that with Alexander. I thought they did a great job building Alexander, you know, and then he ended up winning the title. Like, so I've always
They did the
thought
same thing with Macklin. Macklin got
Yeah.
the slow, steady build to the main event scene as well.
Yeah, so like they've always done well when it comes to that. I just think that now, because they have Santana, now they're in a situation that is like, you know, when everyone is like so focused on Joe Hendry, you also have Santana. So now I was like, who do you go with? Like when it comes to like who's gonna be next in line. I know there's people who are saying like, yeah, Santana's next in line, and he should be the guy in my opinion. But at the same time, if you have somebody as Joe Hendry who's going everywhere, like we're talking about like even across the world, like he's getting bookings everywhere, you know, that's just as important to be a brand ambassador as well. So it's like they're in a situation where I think is a good situation, because it's like, oh shit, we have multiple guys who could really be a champion and really carry the company. And I feel like Santana is no different, right? And we did talk about homegrown talent. Santana is technically homegrown. Like he is homegrown. It's just when he was there the first time, they focused on the tag team, and he did everything accomplished in the tag team division in TNA. So, you know, and when he went back to TNA, this is the main thing I did talk about. I was just like, I think that if he's able to go after the world title, if he's in the world title picture, that's basically surpassing anything he's ever done, because I'm like, that's what he needs. Don't go back to TNA just to be a mid-card guy. You're going to TNA to prove yourself. So you need that upper level. You need that higher, you know, aspect of things. And I feel like he's done enough at this point that he's proved himself. I just want him, me personally, I just want him to be a little bit more patient, because I have no idea where they're going with it. You know, I know the kind of guy that he is. It's not a bad thing because I know, hey, everybody wants the best for themselves. But I just want him to, you know, like, hey, enjoy your work. Everyone sees what you're doing. Everyone, you know, everyone's behind you. Just give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And I think that if he does get a little bit more time, he is going to be a TNA world champion for sure. Because, like, man, he impressed the hell out of me in this matchup.
And he beat Moose. He beat Moose.
I know. Yeah, that was a statement win. A statement win for him, man. To give him credit. Give him credit where credit's due. Then next up, we have the triple main event, starting with Masha Slamovich challenging Jordynne Grace for the TNA Knockouts World Championship. The pre-match video airs to tell us the story leading into this showdown between the two women. The tail of the tape graphic shows and flashes before we return live. Masha Slamovich comes out to a surprisingly big reaction from this Detroit crowd, but Jordynne Grace had a bigger pop. Like, she's considered, like, I would say, like, if it's not Joe Hendry, it's Jordynne Grace is the biggest star in TNA currently. And a lot of that comes down to both of their appearances on NXT this week. And this year, I love the fact that if you remember their instant classic at Bound for Glory 2022, Jordynne Grace on that night wore all white and Masha Slamovich wore all red. This year, they had Jordynne Grace in all red, Masha Slamovich in all white. And I was like, yeah, I love the way they did that, because I saw a picture earlier in the day of their matchup at Bound for Glory 2022. So as soon as they did that, I was like, that's a good shot. That's a good paying attention to their history with one another. The bell sounds and the two women shake hands. You get Slamovich starting off strong. She does a nice dive to the outside, tope suicida, just throwing her body at Jordynne Grace. But then Jordynne Grace catches her when she tries to get back inside and targets her knee. This became the focus of the matchup for her. She even picks her up on her shoulders in a fireman's carry on the outside and just starts launching her body into the ring post, where she hits both sides of her knee on the ring post and then does a DVD on the outside. Slamovich eventually starts to fight back into competitive mode. She eventually hits the snowplow pretty early on in this matchup and gets a close 2 count. Grace comes back and hits the Kryptonite Crunch, the old Jerry Lynn finisher, and only gets a 2. Slamovich launched to the floor, where she lands hard, drawing an audible collective gasp from the Detroit crowd. Slamovich hoists Grace up and connects with a burning fucking hammer. I was like, yo, these two women are just dropping the entire arsenal on one another here. But that only gets a very, very close 2. We get loud TNA chants at that point. Slamovich lands an assortment of kicks, but then Grace comes back and hits a big kick of her own, a spinning back fist. She holds Slamovich up across her shoulders. She plants her into the mat and then quickly muscles her up right into the Juggernaut driver. And usually she hits the Juggernaut driver, that's automatically it. And this caught me when Slamovich kicks out at 2. I was like, she can do it. She can do it, yes. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, she can do it. Let's go, Masha. Grace locks Slamovich into a leg submission. After the work on the leg, she cranks away at it. She then transitions into a stretch muffler. But Slamovich is able to get to the ropes. At this point, the Detroit crowd, loud, "This is awesome" chant. The champ looks for the Grace driver off the ropes, the same way she beat Slamovich at Bound for Glory 2022. But Slamovich is able to, is well scouted it. She headbutts her free. Then she takes over and she connects with a super snowplow. But knowing that Jordynne Grace is an absolute beast, she picks her up, gets the leg trap Russian power driver. 1, 2, 3. Masha Slamovich defeats Jordynne Grace in an absolutely fantastic matchup. This shit went like 13 minutes, and it was all thriller, no filler. It went 13, but it felt like a 20-minute epic title match in the best way possible, because they hit every move they could on one another. And these two women, between their 2 matches at Bound for Glory, I said it on social media, I will say it here, I think they have the best chemistry that we have ever seen from a TNA Knockouts combination since Gail Kim and Awesome Kong. These two women are born to do this against one another, to know in real life that they are best friends. You could already tell that by watching them in the ring. How hard they hit each other. I was like, y'all gotta be friends the way y'all hit each other with these high impact moves, the way y'all strike at each other. Y'all got to be the best of friends. And they showed that after the matchup, hugging and embracing one another. Very emotional ending to the matchup, and an emotional end to the historic reign of Jordynne Grace. Jordynne Grace, easily a top 3 TNA Knockouts world title reign with this run that she's had in 2024. So it was very appropriate that it was Masha Slamovich that put it to an end. I gave this match 4.5 stars. This was one of the best women's matches in North America this year to me. What did you think, Josh?
Yeah, the match was great. Happy for Masha. I think she's worked extremely hard to get to where she's at. Especially for somebody who's, like, she was pretty under the radar, and I think somewhere like a TNA has helped her stock, and that's why a place like TNA, that's where it's usually like pretty good. They're really good at not only giving wrestlers opportunities, but the ones that maybe might not get noticed, and then they put in the work. If they put in the work, then guess what? They're gonna get noticed. And I think she's one of those. Like she's proven to be one of those that, like she signed, nobody didn't know her as much, but now it's like, oh shit, like she's actually really fucking good. And then she can even work with the men too. Like that's how good she is. Like, and it's believable because she could beat the shit out of you. So I think that's what makes again, really happy for her. And then also a lot of people might not know this, but she almost didn't make the show. So like this match almost didn't happen. And we're talking about like legit real life situation. But gladly either somebody helped her or everything ended up working out and she ended up making it to Detroit. So happy to see that, because that would have been such a fucking bummer. I would have been like, ah, damn. They also had a nice build up to it too. So that's why I was hoping that it would have worked out. And, I'm glad it did. And, the fucking match delivered. I think everything else to me is just a plus. I think the match itself being great was a plus because it was more of like, man, I just hope she shows up, and, thankfully she did. And both ladies fucking delivered. I mean, I'm not surprised that they did because like we've seen it before. And like you said, like they are like close friends because, like a lot of like the tri-state area, when they did bookings, they did a lot of shows together too in the tri-state area. So not really surprising at all. Hearing it's not surprising. And obviously like, we've seen it. We've seen it time to time. Like every time you put them in the ring together, ends up working out. And last night was no different. But again, a great moment. It was definitely a great moment. And you can see like how genuinely happy Jordynne was for her, especially being that person to like pass the title up, because we really don't know this reign for Jordynne might be her last one in TNA, because we know the rumors, we know what's going on. We know there's a big great I'm gonna say that there's a big chance. I think it's gonna happen. I think she ends up going to WWE. So this could have been her last run as a champion, and I thought it was a fucking good one in my opinion. Like, not only
like I said, easily a
know,
top three knockouts world title reign of all time.
Because like not even only delivering there, but then being showcased on WWE television. She's done it all in TNA, so I think it's a matter of time where she ends up graduating in a sense, right? So it might have been her last. It might be her last run, but at least they did it for the right person, right? If you want somebody to be a champion, you want somebody to like if we've been saying, TNA does well when it comes to like their homegrown, and then they do like nice stories, and then it builds them up, and then they finally win the title, and it means something. This is a perfect example of it, in my opinion, that they did this very well. And I really hope great things for Masha. She has a title. Let's see what you got.
She deserves this. She definitely does. She 100% deserves it. And man, I was like checking. I was like, am I the high one on this, giving it 4.5 stars? But I checked on Cage Match. It's at like a 9 out of 10 right now. So I was like,
It's pretty fair.
Up there as far as like women's matches. I would say the only couple of matches that I would say it's like in the running with is Bailey and Io from WrestleMania and Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander from All Out. Those are like the only ones I would say are either better or on par with this one.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, I think those are very fair comparisons, because honestly, if you compare like the new, like, not about to say, but you compare like the Stardom stuff and the overseas stuff. I think
then it goes down.
Yeah, like those stuff are
bit.
better. Yeah, those stuff are better in my opinion. Those stuff are definitely better, but at the same time, I mean, there's no knock to it, right? I don't think there's nothing. There's no knock to it. It's just it happens, right? Like I think a lot of the Joshi wrestling, in my opinion, it is better to watch because it's a fucking hard hitting and it's fucking intense. So I mean, again, it's a different style, so that's why, you know, like when people talk about like, oh, you know, Dave always give 5 stars to New Japan and because it's in the Tokyo Dome. I was like, no, it's because they're doing a little bit more than the norm when it comes to wrestling, and I get it. Once you understand that, then I think people will kind of like lay back on that, but I mean, it's never going to happen because it's Dave Meltzer.
And Dave doesn't like women's wrestling.
He doesn't like wrestling. He doesn't like women's wrestling anyway.
He refuses to give them 5, because I gave Io versus Utami Hayashita from Marigold 5 stars, and Dave gave it 4 3/4.
And that's fair.
He loves to give them he was like, it was just a quarter off from 5 stars. He always does.
No, but like giving that 5, I think that's fair, because I thought that was I thought that was way better than I expected, just because it was a WWE talent, even though we know what Io could do. But because of the whole WWE aspect, I thought they were going to be more focused on that. And then like, hey, Io's here. She's just here. That's all that matters. And she made the most of it. And when it came to that match, and I thought, if you're giving it 5, I thought that was fair. But you know how Dave is when it comes to women's wrestling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got to check that one out, Mr. Bonda. Saray versus Bozilla from this past Thursday. I got to check that out before I do my star ratings for the week. But we have 2 more of the triple main event to talk about. And yes, we talked about it a little to start the show. Let's talk about the TNA World Championship up for grabs. Nic Nemeth versus Joe Hendry. They give Joe Hendry the fucking superstar entrance too. He gets a backstage pep talk from Ace Steel. Then they give him a fucking special, elaborate pre-entrance video that's basically a riff off of 8 Mile with Eminem. He's got the hoodie on with the Lose Yourself mixed in with the Joe Hendry music. And then he comes out. He does the Slim Shady shit where he does the chainsaw, and he's got on the overalls. And it was just Joe Hendry inside the arena. We see him with the chainsaw, and he's in his old Slim Shady Wildman days. And then we get the I Believe in Joe Hendry theme song. The crowd is just going insane for him, singing along with his theme song, knowing every word of his catchy ass entrance theme. Then you get Nic Nemeth. He comes out. He gets a pretty good reaction, but then the boos start coming in when they do the formal ring announcement. Joe Hendry gets the big pop for his introduction, and then the fans are noticeably booing Nemeth quite a bit. We get even fuck Ohio, because Nemeth is billed from Ohio here. We get the 2 go face to face in an intense moment. They back up and then lock up with each other. We get Nemeth taking the early offense. He does machine gun elbow spots. Then he does the Jerry Lawler heart attack elbows. Hendry fights back and hoists Nemeth up for a suplex. He keeps him upside down and then walks to all four corners before suplexing him down. He does his dramatic turn to a big pop from the crowd. This crowd is so overwhelmingly pro Joe Hendry. It basically felt like Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania type vibes. Only nowhere near, of course, that big of a crowd, but in the Detroit smaller crowd equivalent to that. We get Kazarian at various times in this matchup when both men are down. He goes for the call your shot gauntlet trophy. The first time Hendry yanks it away and tells him to go in and do his job. Nemeth takes him down with a Fame-Master, and Kazarian tries to fast count him, but he's able to kick out. The next time we get him teasing his title shot on the spot is when Joe Hendry is down on the outside and Nemeth is in the ring down. He goes and gets the call your shot gauntlet. And then John Bradshaw Lakefield, looking like Walker, Texas Ranger, comes out. He comes into the ring. He delivers the clothesline from hell to Frankie Kazarian to a huge pop from the Detroit crowd. He stops at Joe Hendry, who is now up on the outside of the ring. He has a word with Hendry, whispering something in his ear. Hendry grabs him to kind of try to hear him again or ask him what he said. But JBL turns around and beheads him with the short arm clothesline from hell, Jake Roberts style. Ryan Nemeth comes out of the crowd and asks JBL what the hell is going on, and he delivers a clothesline from hell to him. He then walks off through the crowd, and Nic Nemeth never sees him because he's been down this entire time. Hendry gets back into the ring very slowly, and Nemeth hits him with the danger zone, and he gets a 1, 2, and he kicks out after the referee comes down to count the 1, 2, 3. The crowd is going absolutely insane that Joe Hendry has kicked out. We get big "We Believe" chants. Hendry goes for the standing ovation, but he's not able to get it. Nemeth hits him with a super kick and then a second danger zone. 1, 2, 3. Nic Nemeth retains the TNA World Championship to loud bullshit chants from the Detroit crowd. They're so loud you can't even hear Nic Nemeth's music at this point. Like, I think that Nemeth teased that he might be going heel with his reaction to the first kick out and how he complained about it. It was very reminiscent of the heel Dolph Ziggler, the way he complained about Joe Hendry kicking out. But I needed him to be more elaborate with this, because you honestly, like how they did at Slammiversary with, okay, you can kind of like settle in with Joe Hendry not winning because at least they gave you a big moment in Josh Alexander turning heel. I needed Nemeth to confirm that he's a heel now, so we know that Joe Hendry has a path back and that he has to overcome this heel that just used JBL to screw him over. But yeah, this was bullshit. This was bullshit. I'll just say I don't like it. I don't like it. Maybe that's the intention of this whole thing. You're not supposed to like it, but this is kind of like, I don't like it, and I don't know if I want to follow along with the story to eventually see him. And I know there's going to be fans that be like, "Oh, you got to be patient. You got to let it play out." No, I've been down this road before. I'm not here for it. What did you think?
No, I'm actually on the same boat. When it comes to it, because you know, it's interesting that you said about like something that like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to like it. I think there's a difference between somebody saying like you're not supposed to like it to comparing to something that's like, hey, this is probably not a good decision. I think there's a difference to that, right? It's like when people say, hey, this person's a great heel, right? He gets heat, but it's like, is he a really great heel? Like, is he really great? Like, what do you mean? Like, what makes him great? Oh, he gets heat. But I'm like, but how does he get the heat? Like, what makes him great? You know what I mean? Because there's a difference between go away heat and just being a great heel and getting natural heat off of that, right? I think that's a difference, right? So when it comes to what you just said, I was like, that's a big difference to me. It's like, yeah, we're not supposed to like it, but it's like, what the fuck? Because we've seen this picture before, so when are you gonna pull the trigger, right? And for me, you know, like I saw this guy's comment, Mr. Bonds' comment about Joe Hendry. I think it's pretty fair what he said because, again, Joe Henry's style of wrestling is very simple, very basic. He doesn't do anything over the top. Like he's just, it's a very simple style. He's very, even though I think this guy has a little bit more, so I don't want to be like, oh, it's comparing, but it's kind of like LA Knight, where LA Knight does have a simple style of wrestling. It's not over the top, but LA Knight does do certain things. He does do like moonsaults. He does do like certain stuff like springboards, right? He tries a little bit more, but overall his style is very simple. Sometimes you could be simple and it still tells a good story in the ring. I don't think you always need to do flippy stuff. I always don't think you need to be overpowering, but I could also see why there's people who they're like, why they're making this guy a big deal? Like he doesn't do anything that special. So on both sides, I get it. I get both sides when it comes to that. My thing is that because Joe Henry, they basically put a fucking rocket on his back. So once you do that to somebody, you have to go with it. And I think that's where I'm at with Joe Henry, right? Like, I don't think he's like the greatest wrestler, but again, you make this guy so fucking over to the point that it's like, if you're putting him in a title match, you put him in multiple title matches, then you got to pick a fucking bone at this point, right? Something's got to give. So, and I do get that aspect, right? Business wise, right? This is your hottest wrestler. He's the most over guy. He's appearing on 2 freaking shows, basically. One is not even, and at one point he was the most over guy at another company, a show for another company. So I mean, that speaks, that speaks alone on where he's at the moment this year.
That's actually a great point because when we said earlier that Joe Hendry now lost 2 TNA World title matches, then when you add the NXT Championship match, he's lost 3 big title matches. That like how do you like his whole moniker is the fans believing in him. You're asking a lot of the fans to believe in someone if they fail 3 times. That's why I put in the headline: Joe Hendry fails again.
I mean, he's probably the New York Mets at this point because the Mets have that motto, believe, and they haven't won in like almost 40 years. So, I mean, that's just what it comes down to. And I do agree with that. Like, yeah, your whole aspect is I believe, right? You believe in Joe Henry, you believe in him. You have fans chanting that, and then boom, loses again. It's tough. When it comes to wrestling is not the same as sports when it comes to like what's hot at the moment. Because again, when it comes down to it, by the time you give them the title, it's probably not going to mean much. And that's probably going to be the most disappointing part. And we're not saying that, oh, that's definitely going to happen. It just comes off that way because it's just like we're seeing disappointment after disappointment. I think there's a difference between somebody going through hurdles and hasn't had that moment yet, right? That's why, to me, it should have happened, right? It should have happened last night because I'm like, he already lost 1 title match and you made him a big deal. So Bone got to, again, you got to give the guy a bone at this point. But 2 big title matches lost. I mean, by the 3rd time, does it even matter? Like, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like that. It's starting to feel like how many times can you honey dick us?
I believe he's a bum.
Mr. Bondo's on his Josh on a Saturday type vibes. Like,
I mean, I don't blame him, and it's TNA's fault. There's people who feel like it, and that's TNA's fault. TNA got to be blamed for that, unfortunately, because again, they have a plan and creative. They're doing this for a reason. I would love to know what's their reason, what's the end goal, because right now, I mean, it's tough. And I thought the match itself was a fair matchup. It was actually pretty good.
I gave it 3 stars. It was a solid matchup, but like I probably would have gave it like 3.5, 3 3/4 if they had the right result. It's really the way they did it. Like you can
the right result. The right result, and then
lost. It's
I didn't see JBL. That's what I'm saying. And I didn't see JBL. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, Like I was like, I didn't need to see that. And I'm like, what's again? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if JBL knows somebody in there. Like, he has some dirt on somebody. I don't know why he's being used. I don't know why this is a thing. I just didn't need to see that. And when I saw that, I was like, last night, I could not stop laughing. I'm just like, why? I was like, I'm all guys to call somebody a championship. Why was this the guy?
I was like, oh man, like when Joel Pearl on our preview legit said that too. He was like, there's too many factors. I don't know who's gonna win this. I really don't know because you got Kazarian as the referee, you got the whole JBL thing and stuff like that. Like, and it's just like, dude, and I said this on the preview, I'll say it here. You did not need all of this. The simplest thing you could have done is just have him win. Just strike while the iron is hot. And it's like he does not know that term at all. They're like, no, this is wrestling. You got to slow burn everything. That works sometimes. It does not always work. And I don't think it's working here.
Yeah, but that's why, but like I said earlier too, I was like, but that's the problem with a lot of wrestling fans. They got too comfortable with the WWE formula, because I also blame WWE for shit like this, because people think like, oh yeah, storytelling this, storytelling that. No, you need build up storylines, and we kind of seen like a year later with Triple H. I'm like, okay, like we've seen shit from Triple H where it's like, oh wait, this storyline is still going, and it's 7 months later. Oh, okay, like. And some of the shit that he drags out, they're just boring shit. Let's just be real. Like, if we want to give AEW shit for like a lot of the shit that they do, because with AEW, I think a lot of their stuff, it's more of like there's no consistency when it comes to like certain things. Certain things are just bad. I'm just being honest about that. Like, some of it's just not good. You're trying to build up something, and it's just like, guys, stop. It's just not good. Can we just go another direction with this? With WWE, it's more of like Triple H tends to like drag shit for like so long, and it's just like, is this even worth it, or is it even good? Right? Again, no booking is never gonna be perfect, right? But if we're gonna be criticizing, we're gonna give critiques on booking, I think that's fair. So when it comes to something like this, again, like we were praising TNA for what they did with the Masha stuff, right? So it's not like it's all bad.
No,
that's kind of the direction they could have gone.
This is objectively, like I said, I think the Knockouts Tag Team title match was a worse match than this matchup. But the booking decision on this matchup was worse than anything on this show.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's kind of a bummer, because it's just like, fuck, like this is actually a solid show, and then you have this happen. Like we said it before, you could have an amazing show, and there's always that one moment that kind of like people would just look at and they put under a microscope. And unfortunately, at most for this show, I think the last two matches were kind of put under a microscope for different reasons, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. And Mr. Bonda says it, a term I've used multiple times with WWE since Triple H got in charge. There's a difference between long-term storytelling and a story that takes a long time to tell. And the Joe Hendry title chase is becoming the latter. It's becoming the latter.
It is, and it's just like, what the fuck, guys? It's like, again, like me personally, like I said before, it's not so much like, oh, I want Joe Hendry to be champion. That's not what it is about. My thing is, you built this fucking guy up. You make him feel important to the point that is like, all right, we'll give him a title match. And then you do shit like this. Like, that's where I'm at with it. Because I'm just like, guys, like, you have a perfect opportunity to put a title on a guy who's very over. Do it when you have the opportunity. And this is supposed to be your biggest show, right? This is supposed to be like your WrestleMania. This is supposed to be kind of like your all, like, what's AEW's thing? Maybe All In, I would say, because they had like the biggest crowd. So it's like this is like your shit. Like Bound for Glory is like your top
And
show.
especially when you compare it to it. Look at the other three biggest companies not named TNA. New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom. They crowned Tetsuya Naito, and Naito finally got to do the roll call at the Tokyo Dome. WWE. Cody finally finishes his story and beats Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Championship, ending a 1,300 plus day reign. AEW, All In. Bryan Danielson saves his career, keeps it alive, and wins the AEW World Championship from Swerve Strickland. And then there's TNA Bound for Glory. Joe Hendry fails again. Again.
Okay, guys, let's be a little bit different.
See, we're different, guys. We're not your cookie cutter promotion here.
The alternative.
We're the real alternative. We're TNA. Oh, we got Will Chisholm. Will Chisholm said, LOL, it's just TNA. No matter who owns it. Yep, it don't matter.
It's true. I mean,
we
it's true.
say that so much. It seems like we say this after every TNA special or pay-per-view. TNA got a TNA.
Yeah, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, yo, that's how I feel. It's like, oh, I mean, let's see where shit goes from here. Like, I don't know. Like, I really just don't know where you go from here. You know, and hopefully they bounce back. It's not so much like, oh yeah, this takes a step back. It's just a matter of like, all right, what's next? Like, what are you guys gonna do that's gonna, you know, either improve it or make it still matter when he wins? That's just what I want to see.
And Power Driver Finisher asks this, is it because he's not committed to TNA and looking to go to WWE? No, Power Driver Finisher. That's the part that doesn't make any type of sense. This man has gone on multiple interviews and confirmed he signed with TNA until the end of 2025. So, like we know that if this is a story that they're going to continue, they're eventually going to crown him TNA World Champion. But you cannot do the Cody Rhodes thing. I saw Lady B in the chat, and maybe she's joining us a little late. But we talked about this. This is not a Cody situation where they can wait another year to Bound for Glory next year and have him win the TNA World Championship then, like Cody did at WrestleMania to WrestleMania. If he does it then, it will not matter because his contract expires at the end of 2025. So you're going to wait till the end of 2025 to crown him? No, or you're going to crown him at a pay-per-view that is not your biggest show of the year. That's what you're basically telling us as fans.
Yeah, and you know, the problem they fall into is Joe Hendry going to be as over as he is now a year later? One, there's no guarantee to that. And two, there's other guys in line for that title that is like, where you go from here? If somebody's hot at the moment, you're going to go with that. You're going to go with the hot hand.
And let's just be real. And I know how you feel about him, but let's not, and I know how you feel about Cody, but let's not deny the fact that there is no Dwayne Johnson walking in the door at TNA. Because Dwayne Johnson and him coming in and trying to shoehorn himself into WrestleMania is the reason why the fans said, no, we're choosing Cody. This is why Cody became a hybrid of John Cena and Bryan Danielson, because the fans said no to The Rock and said yes to Cody. And that made Cody than he was going into WrestleMania 39.
Yeah, and that was because of how that shit was done. Like, you had the man win the Royal Rumble, and then you're telling me you have him in script give away that opportunity. It just didn't make any fucking sense, right? And in this situation where it's like, again, like a year later, it's like again, TNA is not WWE. WWE was able to like navigate that shit. And the reason why they were able to navigate it is because they kept Roman as champion. That was also part of the big reason. Now it's just like, you know, yeah, he wins the title is from Nemeth, but the next person that should win the title, it should be technically should be Joe Hendry. So anybody else that wins it that isn't Joe Hendry, that also hurts the factor of that, because it's like, why is he world champion? Why didn't you put the belt on him? And I did see somebody write something like that when you just mentioned about the whole WWE aspect. Oh, that he's leaving to WWE, but it doesn't make any sense because he's basically still under a contract for another year, over a year left.
Yeah.
I saw somebody say like, oh, they were trying to use the whole aspect of about, oh, he shouldn't have talked down on the company because he's and I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, when did you see Joe Hendry say anything negative about TNA? Like, where are you getting your information from? Now, if you're talking about the stuff with WWE, like, hey, that's kind of just fucking stupid, because there was no negativity, there was no factor of what he said that was negative of TNA. If anything, he was very grateful for TNA for not only the opportunities, but because they take, he's basically the only person that from TNA that could go into PC, work in the PC, and there's no restrictions. Like, that's a pretty big deal. I just didn't see anything that was negative. That was just like, what the fuck? Like, they're not like, what? Like, that just didn't make any fucking sense. And it's, again, like, if the man is under contract for another year, that means he ain't leaving anytime soon. You can still put the title on him.
Yep. We shall see what happens here. We will keep watching because that's what we do here at True Hill Heat. But we'll see if everybody else is going to keep following along with this story. But finally, the main event of the show saw the Hardys challenging and ABC challenging the system for the TNA World Tag Team Championships in a Full Metal Mayhem. You get the commentators before the matchup are running down the upcoming special events, including TNA Genesis, which will be the pay-per-view in January for the show. So no Hard to Kill in January. They'll have the return of Genesis instead, and they're doing a special Halloween episode on Halloween on October 31st, Thursday. They did have a graphic that said El Hijo del Vikingo, new X Division champion. So I guess that was a change in the booking, because that graphic definitely said he was the new X Division champion. From there, Hannafin took it over to the pre-match tape. He says, "Are you ready for one more ride into the extreme?" The taglines had the interesting notes and rules for the special Full Metal Mayhem. The Hardys gave it a special art workover, and it was a redesigned Full Metal Mayhem. So you had a mat that Jeff Hardy actually did his art on. You had art being done on the different tables and ladders in the matchup. You get the Hardys come out to a big reaction to the iconic theme. You get ABC, who comes out to a pretty good reaction, and then of course the system. They get the big, long, drawn out intro before the matchup. No formal ring inductions. We get everybody going at it from the minute go. If they didn't have North Carolina coming up on the schedule, you would have already known that this is the Hardy Boys that are gonna win this one. The action gets off in a hurry, and almost immediately everyone's fighting on the outside. You get Myers escapes through the barricade, and the babyfaces go after Myers and Edwards. Myers is left for dead. The Hardys fight back to the ringside area, beating down on Edwards. They lay him onto a colorful artwork table, and Matt climbs an equally colorful art ladder, and he hits his big lay drop through the table. ABC and the Hardys go after it. They have this basically like a construction ladder that they basically extend across the ring. They put the construction ladder through a giant ladder, and we have a big ladder bridge fight where Jeff and Ace Austin have steel chairs. They knock their opponents off of it, and they start battling with the steel chairs on the big ladder bridge before the system get back into the matchup. Austin slingshots Bay off of the middle rope to bring Edwards off of the ladder with a backwards cutter, which looked really nice. We get another wild ladder spot that leads to everyone being down and out. The fans chant, "This is awesome" at this point. Matt Hardy stops him, stops Eddie Edwards from climbing the ladder. He gives him a big power bomb through a table on the outside. We get the system with side effects off the apron onto the Hardys. Back in the ring, we get Ace Austin is all alone, and he begins to climb when Alicia Edwards runs out in a neck brace and pushes him off of a ladder and over. She then takes off the neck brace to reveal she is completely fine, and then she gets a twist of fate from Matt Hardy. You get Jeff Hardy, who fights with one of the system outside the ring, but then the system get Ace Austin in the ring alone. Ace Austin is climbing the ladder. He grabs onto the rung where the titles are being held, and they basically move the ladder away. And Brian Myers gets to finally complete his Edge fantasy. He's always been an Edge head. He's always been an Edge mark. So he climbs a ladder in the corner, and Ace Austin is hanging by the rung. Freaking Eddie Edwards pulls his leg back and swings him towards Brian Myers, who hits him with the spear in midair. Great spot that was. You get Jeff Hardy on the outside. He gets Brian Myers out there. He puts him on two of the colorful tables, and he climbs a 20-foot ladder and does a swanton bomb, but he is way too close to the ladder and nearly breaks his neck coming down. That was fucking too scary. That was too scary. You get Eddie Edwards beats Matt Hardy from behind with a kendo stick. Eddie then begins to ascend the ladder, only for Matt and Jeff in opposing corners to throw chairs at him. They hoist him up, double power bomb through colorful tables on the outside. Matt and Jeff each climb the ladder, pull down the titles, and the Hardys are your new TNA World Tag Team Champions. Huge pop from the Detroit crowd. They go into the crowd to celebrate with the fans as we close TNA Bound for Glory. This match had a lot of fun spots. I will give it that, but it was way too fucking long. It was like 28 minutes, and there was like slow spots. It was some good fun spots. I did think that it was a good matchup, so I gave it 3.5 stars, but it was just way too long. Way too long. I'll give you the exact number. It's 27 minutes, 26 seconds. That's way too long. That's just way too long. You could have done a lot of these spots in like 20 minutes, and it would have been a better match. What did you think?
Same. I thought the match was a little too long. The match itself, I thought it was okay. I'm like, should this have been the main event? No, in my opinion, because it was just out of like the triple main event that they advertised. Out of the three, obviously the women's match was better. I thought that probably should have main evented on the personal level.
And it would have been the first time that women main evented Bound for Glory.
Yeah, you could have done exactly. You could have done something like that. Could have been something pretty good. Like that would have been something very special. I mean, the match itself, yeah, like you said, it had some good spots. The spear spot was pretty cool. The only thing I probably had a problem with, like, it kind of felt like it took too long. Like it kind of felt like they were trying to be in place for it, and that kind of threw me off a little bit. You know, I try not to nitpick when it comes to like, oh, certain spots or it feels like it's choreographed, because I get it. You want to be, you know, a lot of wrestlers want to be perfectionists. You know, they want to make sure it hits right. So sometimes I try not to pick on that, but sometimes when it's too obvious, then it's like, bro, I gotta point that out. I'm sorry, I just got called like it is. Like the cutter spot was nice, but then when I watched it again, like this dude like stuck his head out a little bit, like he went to the side to hit. I was like, that kind of like threw me off a little bit too. Like, you know, I try not to like pick on shit like this, but when it's too obvious, I'm like, yeah, you know, it has to be said, unfortunately. But like, yeah, there were some few scary spots, like the spot that you mentioned about like this dude almost breaking his neck. I'm like, oh, like,
I was like,
oh,
Jeff,
boy.
you don't need to do this. You don't. You do have to do the spot, but there's a better way to do that thing spot.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, I mean, overall, I thought the match was okay. Like it was okay. Did the right team won? I mean, I don't know if the right team won, but was the team that won expected? Yeah. Like I thought it was pretty predictable.
Once they were in the main event, it was quite obvious the Hardys were
Yeah.
gonna win.
Yeah, I also didn't mind the look. I thought the look was unique because it was called like the kind of name it was, and like I know Jeff did the art because I know his style of his art at this point, so I know he definitely did it. So when it comes to stuff like that, I didn't mind it too much. I thought it kind of like made the match pretty unique. It wasn't like a typical, like late type.
My only question is, what's the storyline reason that the challengers get to have an advantage where they put their art in the matchup?
Yeah, I mean that was pretty. I was like, all right, maybe that was just way. Hey, Hardy boys, I give you the main event, and you can do whatever you want. So have at it. And then Jeff was like, can I just do my artwork somewhere? All right, cool. And then, oh shit, you said somewhere. I didn't know he was gonna do it on everything. Fuck it, let's just do this. Maybe that's what it was, but like, I mean, I didn't mind it too much. I didn't mind it too much. Because it did, I mean, it looked pretty unique, and I think it kind of added to the madness of the match because it was kind of like the match was kind of like out there with all the crazy spots. So I mean, when it comes to that, it is what it is. But I do feel overall, I felt the match was fine. There was a lot of people who didn't like the match, which was kind of like, it was pretty odd to see. There's a lot of people who they just didn't like it, and maybe because it was too long, like you said. But there was a lot of people who said that the match just wasn't good. I disagree with that. I don't think the match was bad. But I could see where maybe it threw people off. But then also, I just don't think this should have been the main event for Bound for Glory.
Nah. There was multiple matches on this card that was better. The opener was better than this. The
women's match, women's match was better.
I think if Joe Hendry wins the world title match, that would have been better than this.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, the Hardys got another moment for their historic career. Like it was kind of taken away from them in AEW. They were in line to win the titles, and then, like we said earlier, what happened with Jeff Hardy, and the opportunity just didn't come back, unfortunately. It is what it is. So maybe this was their way of like, trying to give them a bone. They got it. Joe Hendry didn't for whatever reason, but okay, cool. Yeah, that's where I stand on with that.
Yes, we shall see what goes down with this reign for the Hardys, but it made sense. Joel Pearl kind of talked about their upcoming schedule. They're doing a whole tour of North Carolina. They got Turning Point, which is going to be during WrestleCade. They got another show that's going to be their next TV taping, I think, is in Fayetteville. So, yeah, it just made sense to put the titles on the Hardys. This is their one final run as TNA World Tag Team Champions. And it'll be a fun one, but it's just like, I think I would be happier about the Hardys winning if Joe Hendry didn't lose.
Yeah, that's probably what it is, too. Yeah, it's not so much I'm upset that the Hardys won. It's just, like, again, it was very predictable. But then, it falls into that trap of like, oh, you give these guys who've been around for so long, you give them the titles, but then, you couldn't give it to your homegrown talent who's the most over guy. That's kind of the situation that they fall into. So there's a lot of people who they're happy for the Hardys, so they don't, they don't give a shit when it comes to that. They're just happy that the Hardys are champions again. But then you have the other spectrum of like, why did the Hardys get the titles again? Why were we doing this?
And I love that the comments are kind of echoing what you're saying here. We got Call Me Mr. Vonda, who says, message to all the wrestling promotions. Can we focus on the future of the business in the title pictures instead of the past in order to avoid, but the no one is over convo put over the youngins? And then Power Driver Finisher says, let's not uplift the women by giving them the main event, or let's not put the title on the most over wrestler on their roster. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, and they're like, what the fuck? Like, when it comes to the first comment, I get what he's saying, but then there's sometimes like you need that veteran guy, like, or you need like that, you know, you need that veteran guy to like, you know, fortunately carry it at the moment to say per se, you know, like sometimes it's not always about the youngsters because sometimes the youngsters are just not ready. I don't want to give a title to somebody who's not ready. You know, that's just what it comes down to. WWE tried that with Randy Orton and it didn't work. Not only because he was immature, but he was not ready in the ring. He wasn't what he is now. You know, there's certain situations where like I get it because that's the whole aspect of like guys are getting older, the careers are winding down, so you want to give it to the younger guys, which I get that. That's why I always felt like New Japan has done those kind of things better because they have like a young lion system where they eat pins. They're getting reps, but they're eating pins until that one person sticks out, and then they make them their new star. So I think they have like a better system when it comes to that. You have an understanding of like it's not always about like putting the younger guys over. It's about wanting the younger guys to learn to get them over to the point that when they're ready, boom, you have a star in advance. But what he said is not 100% wrong. But I mean, in this situation with the Hardys, it's not so much that it's a bad thing. It was an expected thing because of the whole North Carolina kind of thing, like what that's going on. So I get it. You want to sell tickets, and that helps a lot. So I mean, I'm not 100% against it. What I'm against is this being the main event. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us live. Final call for super chat donations. Come on, guys. Show us some love for us talking about TNA Bound for Glory, giving you this in-depth review. We do this for all the major TNA pay-per-views. We might start doing some previews for the special event by TNA over on our Patreon, patreon.com/True Hill Heat. $3 a month gets you that type of exclusive content, and the best place to support us when we are not live here. But hit the $sign, send a super chat donation before we sign things off. But as well as that, let us know your match of the night, MVP, LVP, whether you gave the show a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, and out of 10, what did you give the show? For me and the good brother, Josh, for TNA Bound for Glory 2024 in 3, 2, 1. Thumbs up from both of us across the board. Out of 10, what did you give the show, Josh?
I want to say like a 7.5, 7.5, 7.75. Because overall the show was great. I thought the show was great. Not really no big complaints until like maybe like the last two matchups. Not because all the matches were bad. It was just the placement and the end result. Like that's just where I'm at, right? Because when we talk about certain things, right, your world title match should matter the most, and unfortunately, no, the person that should have won didn't win. That's just what it comes down to.
I'm right there with you and a bunch of the chat, the chat as well. I was like between like 7.5. I'm gonna lean towards 7.5 because it's got two genuine TNA match of the year candidates on the card. A lot of the show was good to very good, but I also agree with you with the final two matches, just the booking decisions with the final two matches. One was being placed in the main event, and one was the result of the matchup. So those final two matches did knock it back, where I would have probably been with Mr. Bonda and been like an 8 to 8.5. If Joe Hendry wins and that's the main event instead of the Hardys, I'm probably at like an 8, 8.5 for this show because I think it was generally a very good to great show. But I think that those two matches did drop it down a bit. So I'll give it a 7.5.
Yeah, that's fair.
Where are you at, Josh, with the match of the night?
Match of the night? There's actually two where I'm like, you could flip-flop it, but match of the night, fuck it, I'm going with the women. I'm gonna go with the one. I'm gonna go with the TNA Knockouts Championship match.
I'm very close as well with Speedball Mike Bailey versus Elio Del Vikingo and the Masha Slamovich Jordynne Grace, but man, just the emotional win for Masha Slamovich and being, a big fan of her and actually getting to know her personally, that win felt extra special to me. So I got to give that the match of the night. That, and definitely the chat agrees. A bunch of people agree with that take as well. Who was your MVP for the show, Josh?
MVP, I got Speedball, and I got Masha.
Yeah, I got to go co-MVP as well. Masha Slamovich and Speedball Mike Bailey. Speedball, like we said when we talked about the opener, he's just probably the most reliable banger on the TNA roster. And Masha Slamovich, it felt like a real passing of the torch from her to Jordynne Grace. So I'll actually throw Jordynne Grace as well in the MVPs. I'll make her another co-MVP as well. And unfortunately, LVP for the show. You know what? No, I'm not gonna penalize Joe Hendry for what TNA did. I'm giving LVP to Tommy Dreamer, the head booker of TNA. Who do you give it to, Josh?
Same. I gotta give it to whoever booked that. I gotta give it to. Hey, you says Tommy Dreamer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and I like Dreamer, but yeah. I'll give it to Dreamer because I don't know, man. Like I said, like he may have a plan for this. Maybe there's a reason why. And anybody that knows adversity, it is Tommy Dreamer technically. But then it's like, bro, when you don't be like, don't use your experience against like Raven, because Raven beat you like 30 times before you won, bro. Please don't do that to Joe Hendry. Please don't do that to Joe Hendry. That's all I'm saying.
He would definitely do that. Oh man. I'm gonna throw in another co MVP. So I got Masha, Speedball, Jordynne Grace, and Rhino for that induction speech. I had to throw him in as well. But that's going to bring us to a close, Josh, on our TNA Bound for Glory 2024 review. I had a lot of fun talking about this show with you and the chat. Thank you so much to the chat. And thank you so much to Call Me Mr. Bonda, sending a nice little super sticker to us to close things off. Mr. Bonda, you've been great in the chat. Throw it in. I know you're the #1 Joe Hendry hater, so you're feeling good. So we appreciate that. Good, brother. Thank you so much for the love. We also got Mr. Bonda saying EC Dub. Indeed. For our LVP and my MVP. Josh, you let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and when they will see you back here on the channel.
Social media, you can follow me at JMPunk 321, Twitter and Instagram. And I'll be back for the next True Heat 301. I'll be back for that. Are we doing that Sunday because of Crown Jewel?
Yeah, we're gonna do that on Sunday. So Saturday we'll probably do our Crown Jewel review. I'll find somebody to do that. Probably. Well, I'm only 4 hours, but I'm only 4 hours ahead of y'all this week because of daylight saving time. I got an extra hour of sleep for daylight savings time over here in the UK, so I'm only 4 hours ahead. So I can do a Crown Jewel review after the show. So yeah, Crown Jewel is going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll move our flagship podcast from Saturday to Sunday, where we'll talk about everything from TNA Bound for Glory, AEW, WWE, Crown Jewel, and everything else from WWE on Sunday. So Sunday, join us for that. Next Sunday, we'll be here with our flagship podcast, like Josh said, 301. And then on Saturday, we'll have our watch party for Crown Jewel, as well as our Crown Jewel review. We got a Crown Jewel preview that will most likely be on Wednesday, guys. So stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to stay notified, so you always get alerted whenever we go live. I will be back live here tomorrow, probably again, 2:05 p.m. Eastern time. It will be myself and somebody else, or maybe I'll call on Corey Brenner to join me for our NXT Halloween Havoc reviewing tonight's show. You can watch it live on Peacock, WWE Network, depending on where you're at. So join us live for that tomorrow. Until then, follow me on the Twitter machine at TrueHillSP3. Follow the gang, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at TrueHillHeat. Patreon.com/True Hill Heat. I'll probably also be doing a quick review of the first weekend of the Super Junior Tag League for New Japan Pro Wrestling. If you haven't already, check out today's show that had two of the best matches of the tournament so far, with TMDK versus the Bullet Club War Dogs and Catch 22 versus Roppongi Vice. Go out of your way to watch those two matches, because I'll be praising that probably on next Sunday's True Hill Heat flagship podcast for matches of the week. We got Call Me Mr. Bonda. He says, no, thank you, gentlemen. Let's go. Let me go prepare for NXT Halloween Havoc. Indeed, do that. And we got Power Driver Finisher in the chat getting the touching the tips and saying, take care, y'all. Thank you so much, Power Driver Finisher. Thank you, all of you, for joining us live. Don't forget to drop the like on this video. Share it with your friends if you haven't already. But for the True Jaw Josh, it is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3. This has been our TNA Bound for Glory 2024 review. We are signing off until next time.